Fuck it. I'm done messing with Facebook. We're live.
Okay.
Fuck it. I'm done messing with you. For those of you who are watching on Facebook, this is episode 113 of the motherfucking podcast, the official podcast of the International Power Rock Combo motherfucking Ruckus from Denver and Chicago, respectively. And I hate to be rude, guys, but I'm going to leave my phone on and amplified so that if anything fucks up and Ethan sees it, he can shoot me a text and let us know that it looks like shit. Okay. So, because Ethan is not here this week, our tech guru, but we do have this week, of course, as always, Gordo. Gordo.
Hello.
Love you lots. Good to see you. And very special guest this week. You may recognize one of these guys as a previous guest on the show, Gianni DiGiacomo, our auditory instrument specialist, who came in and fitted Gordo with some really bitchin' ear molds last time he was here. But
yes,
we've got him back on the show to talk about his fucking band, his badass fucking black metal band, Necrosophik Abyss. He is joined by his lead singer, Josh. Josh, what's your last name? I don't know what your last name is.
Svan Lohenfeld.
That is the most black metal name I've heard all week.
Yeah, fucking
it's
right.
part of the audition. Welcome,
it's
Josh.
The only reason I got picked up by the band. It's just a name, really.
Right. That's fucking hilarious. Well, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you guys on. Gordo and I have just been sitting here chatting and cracking jokes about black metal while we were waiting for you guys to get Skype figured out.
Yeah.
I guess if you're in a black metal band, all you really know how to operate are like swords and dead animals and trees, right?
I mean, don't forget lo-fi equipment.
Lo-fi equipment, right? Yeah, man.
Looking at this more of like kind of a Costco club where you have different like levels of membership. Like to reach the premium black level, you have to go through all the other colors first. Like
100%. And then
right.
there's
You don't get your official corpse paint templates until you reach the tungsten level.
Yeah.
Like when you get to tungsten.
First. It's all chalk.
Dude, you know those like pumpkin carving templates you can get to like put on a pumpkin and like carve them out? It's like they have like, once you get to the tungsten level of the black metal club, you can they'll send you like little paper cutouts and you can put them on your face and use them as guidelines for your corpse paint.
Well, I'm pretty sure like that all comes strictly from Immortal. So I mean that's high tier. Like I don't know what the anti-religious like hand sign for that is right there, but that's straight from a bot. So it's super serious business.
Yeah, no, totally. And Gordo and I were also kind of talking about how completely and totally ignorant we are to the genre of black metal music. My really only point of reference is I have like heard Emperor and Mayhem and Burzum and shit like that before, but like, and I saw the Lords of Chaos movie. And that's really it, is I have some friends who have been into the music before and know a lot about it, but I'm totally ignorant. So why don't you tell us and some other people in our audience who may be ignorant to the subject, why don't you tell me – oh, Ethan says the stream looks great. Love you, Ethan. Thank you. I'm going to silence my phone now. Yeah, so but before we get into that, I want to give a quick shout out to our patrons for helping us run this podcast, for helping us make records, for everything that you guys do to make this work. You guys make the goddamn world go round. Please join us at patreon.com/MFRuckus if you want to help us make more cool shit. Just wanted to get that out of the way at the top of the show, man. We fucking love you guys. If you are on Patreon, look us up. We're on there, man. We back a lot of cool-ass people. I recently started backing this channel that is just called Learn to Ween, and it is this guy who just, I'm pretty sure, takes mushrooms every episode and teaches a Ween song on guitar. I've been learning a ton of great songs, and it's really, really fun. So, yeah.
Sounds
Ween
like
fan,
fun.
but that sounds like the best thing ever.
Yeah, it's pretty
Sounds
cool.
great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So we got Necrosophik Abyss. We got Gianni and Josh in the house. Guys, tell us a little bit about what your definition of black metal is and how it applies to what you guys do. Like, do you guys consider yourself strictly within that genre, or is it just a major influence of yours? Tell us a little bit about it all.
We'll probably both respond, but do you want to take it, or you want me to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. So I mean, one thing I particularly like about this group is we all have our own 2 cents to put in, which you know, it gives us our own kind of unique flavor and style and sound with it. As far as how we relate to the black metal scene, I think it's really relevant that, like, just kind of talk about, as far as lyrical content, what we're about, everything from an artistic standpoint is very blackened. I wouldn't necessarily say like true black. It's kind of a purist genre. So
right, and that's something we were talking about in the beginning. Is that it is kind of a purist genre, and there are, like, some people would say there is no metal but there is no black metal but true Norwegian black metal.
Not true Norwegian. Yeah, exactly. You know.
So when you say blackened, what do you mean? Like, when you say the music is blackened, what do you mean?
I would say undeniably aesthetically, and you guys, I mean, the world will see us perform in the fall and really get a good idea of the aesthetic, because aesthetic is a part of it. I think that's undeniable. Aesthetic is a part of it. Lyrical content, I mean, compositions is a huge factor too, but I feel like, because and this is where it gets weird, because it's such a pure genre. Like, you can talk to some people who would say, like, you know, Yellow Eyes from California, black metal as hell. And then you talk to another group that would say they're false and they're LARPing, or like in betweens and outsides. Like, it's weird, and I don't want to try and pass this off as something that we're not. But
I mean, wouldn't it be fair to say that it's all LARPing to a degree? Like, even like, okay, so like, if you think about like true Norwegian black metal, and this is just, again, this is based on my limited knowledge, like watching the Lords of Chaos movie or things like that, but like, from what I know about the story, isn't it a bunch of affluent Norwegian kids who just were kind of rebelling and wanted to play dress up and act scary and got really into like demonic motifs and making a bunch of scary, spooky noise? Like, isn't LARPing kind of a fair term to apply to?
Depends on the band, I suppose.
Yeah, it depends on the band, because Dissection was about it.
Yeah, and some
You
were
know,
real serious, and some were kind of that, like, what do you consider that, like, you know, you're talking about Lords of Chaos, where there's like that kind of like that poser exposure thing, where they're constantly trying to, like, no one's darker or more evil than me. And eventually they push Varg to be fucking like the most psychotic one of all of them. And
Poser exposure. I love that, dude.
I would also say, as far as Lords of Chaos go, it's an interesting piece of romanticized fiction on some true events. But I mean, if you really want to get into it, I would say watch, God, what is it?
Till the Light Takes Us.
Until the Dawn Takes. Yeah, that's a
I mean, I've seen that, and I drew this. Yeah, and I drew the same conclusion from that documentary, which is, look, I'm just saying that, like, I may not know a lot about black metal, but I know a fair bit as an armchair psychologist and sociologist about people and development, and I know people adopt identities and avatars to portray a certain desired image to people out in the world. So I would argue that even the most, like, bout it black metal musicians are just really, really, really committed to the part, for whatever that's worth.
I would say that's a that's a very fair point. You know, it really comes down to, you know, it's someone once worded to me like, not a lot of happy people get into black metal. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, it's not saying you can't be like living a well-adjusted life and be into it, but like the people who are way into it, like, you know, like I don't want to use the term elitist, but just like the people who are just too into it. They've LARPed so hard they forgot what reality is, type deal.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
that happens in, you know, that can happen in any cult, that can happen in any music subgenre, that can happen in a political movement, you know, that anything where ideology is involved and it becomes integrated with one's identity, you know, you can lose that self-awareness and begin to become identified with the chosen identity.
No, for sure. And I definitely think that I mean, obviously, emotion is a huge part of it. So many people like to that since we're saying LARP as sociopaths, like psychopaths, but really you're just really getting emotionally involved in something, and once emotion gets involved, all logic goes out the window. I mean, this is just kind of I kind of have complicated views on it. It would be kind of hard to explain my 2 cents on black metal in a brief amount of time, so I'll pass the mic to G here.
Well, we've got plenty of time. I don't know if you've listened to the show, but we go for a while. So
Oh, okay, yeah.
We'll unpackage a
I've
little
heard-
bit, but let's to kind of synopsisize the band. I think
synopsisize. This is the synopsisized version.
for keeping things on track. But no, so I think there's 6 members of the band. So that's, you know, in any kind of band, you're going to have, you know, different personalities, different attributions to the band itself. We're doing a 3-guitar playing black metal band, which is a challenge. It's actually been a challenge to do this with multiple melodies that we're doing. We're not just all kind of playing the same thing. And with that, the influences in black metal really do range all over the place, as far as it being like truly like a spiritual experience for some members, to being what you're talking about, where it's like aesthetic and like just the wanting to put that raw emotion into the music, to even being like, you know, we want to stay centered in black metal, be blackened, which means that term basically means, when we're talking about blackened, it means that we're heavily influenced by black metal, but we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, because there's really no way to do it. You know, it's a genre that has been very established. There is the truths. You know, we're from Denver, Colorado. We're not going to be, you know, we're not born from the wizard, or born from the like the blizzard landscape,
or the wizard.
the blizzard landscape of Norway. You know, which is that we don't have that same thing that created this genre. Just like, you know, sometimes, you know, I kind of lost track on where that goes, but you know, it's just one of those things where like, aesthetic is part of it, of course, but then there is some true spiritualism within the band. So each member does have, you know, different ways that they interpret the way that we do black metal. But so far, very interesting. It's been very powerful. It's been kind of unique on how we're all kind of different in a lot of different ways. You know, I'm more aesthetic, and I do like some of the spiritualist stuff behind it, but I'm not as extreme as some of the other people in the band. But we're doing a really good job of like, you know, we don't want to make fun of the genre at all. You know, it's like one of those things where we're like,
you definitely, I mean, you're earnest in your desire to portray it true to form.
Best we can, you know. So the whole concept of the band was created on the agony of mourning, which is, you know, it's not something that's so unique, you know, even in the heavy metal genre. You know, it's like, it's something where we wanted to look really what emotions are evoked by death.
So you wanted to specifically focus on that motif. Like,
that's how we started. Yeah, that was the goal. Cool. We wanted to really, you know, focus on that, and we kept true to it, you know, as much as we could. It is a challenge to kind of make everything to, you know, harness that emotion, because it is very hateful and malice-filled music, you know. So it's very dark, and you know, we're trying to be powerful with what we're doing. So sometimes death isn't always the emotion that is, or isn't always the subject matter, but it's definitely like how humans interpret death and how we mourn, and how, you know, you get through, like when someone passes, like there's a lot of sadness. So, you know, we're kind of, it's funny to say, you know, we were trying to be a very sad, sincere black metal band, but stay within that, like, so anyone who does like, black metal, we're trying to stay in that brutality, that like Dark Funeral, and these bands that are very, very heavy. So it's weird. It's always weird to sell yourself as being heavy, because you sound like such a dork. You're like, we're so heavy, but it's a pretty heavy band.
I'd also say, since like we're talking about black metal, like we still have that like very maudlin themes, but lyrically, like tonally, sonically, we're not like DSBM. We're not depressive suicidal black metal, which is a whole another like arch, which and I want to make all the listeners who haven't heard our music like get clear, like, we're not Ghostbath. you're not gonna hear that from our shit, but we draw a lot about it. I mean, even like from the name Necrosophik Abyss, it's taken from an anti-cosmic cult, Temple of Black Light type shit. That's where the name originally comes from.
I would say unpackage that and like even explain what those are. Explain what.
Yeah, you're talking to a couple of guys who are almost entirely ignorant. Like, I know more about black metal than my dad, but that's probably it.
Yeah, but that's a good thing to kind of
explain. It's left, because left path is the best path. So I'm a dilettante on the subject at best. I'm a hobbyist. So take it with a grain of salt. No one based their life decisions around how I'm going to describe this. But my understanding, and from what I've read and from the research I've done about how I described it, the whole, I'm not going to get too deep into the whole like kind of anti-cosmic idea, but kind of, I mean, it's somewhere that lies between a brain that experiment, if you guys are familiar with that thought experiment, and just pure misanthropy. This isn't quite real. Fuck everything. We're all prisoners and we're trapped in this type of life. Man, I wish Clay was here.
I know.
So more than just general mourning, it's more of a specific mourning for the universal existential dread that we all experience as human beings.
What we're trying to evoke with the sounds, even, it's to really
100%.
have that like really uncomfortable parts, where it's like, it's like life and death can be incredibly uncomfortable, and we're trying to do that sonically, and that's where the three guitars do come into, where there's these points that are very abrasive, it's very hard to listen to, but then we always bring it back into this kind of beauty and felicity of like life, because it's trying to worship both life and death, and really that there is a struggle in both, and it's a very poetic way of describing like what we're doing. But that was the intention when the band got together, was like, hey, like, let's be black metal, let's be black akin, whatever it is. Let's try to do something that's kind of a new brand on it, but like, we're not going to create something that, we're not trying to create a new genre. We just want to do the best version of what we can do. And actually, we just got to listen to some of the demo that we're recording, and it's come off sonically just. It's
crushing.
Really,
it's beautiful.
So what's the actual like breakdown of the band in terms of personnel? Like, what is you mentioned you have 3 guitar players, but who fills out the rest of the roles there?
This is something Gianni and I talked about that's really really fascinating. Is what they've been doing guitar wise. Yeah, talk a little bit about the lineup and the personnel.
Yeah, so the arrangement basically is set up with three electric guitar players, of course, and then a bass player, drummer, and then Josh is singing. So when we're doing our arrangements within, trying to play guitar with three different guitar players, there is going to be a lot of shared melody, but for the most part, we really are trying to be not playing the same thing, like as far as like not this, we're harmonizing with one another, and a lot of times there's dissonance. So that's where black metal, and that's where any type of music where chords are clashing or they are not in unison with one another, where harmonically that you'd want to, normally your ear kind of gravitates towards. So we'll tear it apart to where it's like it's very dissonant and very dark and ugly and weird, I guess it would be a good way to describe it. Then we bring it back to something that's familiar. So it's kind of like whenever we get into these really dissonant parts, the goal is to bring you back so you can like compare it to that and be like, wow, that's kind of a mind fuck where it went for a while. So there is, one of the guitar players is very influenced by the shoegaze genre, which is, kind of, it's got a lot of different areas.
It's like kind of droney, proggy, more like textural
stuff. And there's a lot of, that's a good way to describe it.
I think that's a key word, even including like, and again, this is coming from someone who's not a string player, but textural is, I think, what makes our 3 guitar system so interesting. Because not only do we have the harmony, everyone is so well versed in music, and it's so phenomenal to work with everyone in the band. But the textures that come out are just so, as like, from my opinion, just so fucking cool.
Yeah, and you know, so the goal is to independently play things and to try to set it up like a when a 3-string or a 4-string quartet works together, where not everyone's playing on the same frets, same notes at the same time, which would just be kind of stacking the melody, right, or just making it bigger and more voluptuous, I guess, which is a terrible word for that, but like just building it up to make it so it's thick and fat. But what we're doing is we're either a fifth apart or a minor third. If people are listening that do know music theory a little bit, or we're even like a second apart from each other in certain parts. And I actually live right in the middle. I'm like the rhythm player, so I'm actually playing most of the bones. And then Clay is the other guitar player, and then Theo is the other guitar player, and they are both in very different areas of the neck and actually the melody. So a lot of times they will be like, I'm kind of keeping everything together with the rhythm section, bass player and drummer, while the guitar players are actually, in some sense, kind of doing like a dueling piano thing, but like black metal, because it's it's very fast, it's very intense. It's been a really challenging experiment because there has been things that have had to be completely written, broken down, listened to when we record it, and been like, that's ugly, but it's too ugly to actually make sense of.
Right. You're trying to create tension, not trying to. Like,
that's a good way to describe it.
Well, especially if you're trying to. The challenge is, as I imagine it, is you are trying to create a very specific motif, and different types of notes clashing are going to cause people to generally emote in a different way. Like you want to emote dread, you want to invoke dread, but you don't want to invoke irritation or anger or,
Or if we do irritation and anger, we want it for brief enough to, like, for someone to get a break to go back to the actual, like, okay, I can vibe out to this.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, which is hard to say, but when we pull into those parts where we do, as a collective, say, hey guys, like, we're, that one got pretty dark and crazy, but like, hey, here's your footing. It's kind of like through a dream or nightmare landscape and like animation, and it's like, it's really like, you can't make out what's going on, and it's real trippy. You come back and it kind of gives you something to center, because if you don't, people aren't going to be able to listen to it or enjoy it, and we want it to be an experience where you kind of, you go from one end to the other end, but you do, it does make some kind of sense. It can't.
Well, it's like if you listen to, and this is going to a completely different place, but like if you listen to like a Frank Zappa album, you're gonna have songs that are like based upon more classic pop and R&B sensibilities. Like you're gonna have your poppier, rockier R&B stuff, but then the next track is gonna be even doo-wop. Right? He drummed with a lot of doo-wop and rock group, kind of doo-wop and R&B groups early in his career. But you have then you go into something that's a completely dissonant, avant-garde, jazz, experimental type of thing.
Help, I'm a rock.
Yeah.
What was that?
Help, I'm a rock.
Help, I'm a rock. Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I would say that's kind of, we didn't set out to be so experimental. I think it was the way the band formed was Theo and Clay both had reached out to me at different times when I was in a band before called Voidbringer, which I think, Aaron, you might have known about. But,
I remember Voidbringer, yeah.
Because I used to see you guys at rehearsals, so you would hear a little bit of us and what we were doing. So that band was kind of like was just, I think that it was just falling apart, how bands tend to fall apart. And actually Clay and Theo both reached out to me, and they were like, hey man, I really want to, start a black metal project. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. 2 different people that don't know each other are reaching out to me to start this black metal band. And I was like, well, I'm kind of in a band right now, and I might be a little busy with this band, so let's do this or whatever. So I kind of was trying to play matchmaker, to tell you the truth. I was trying to like, get together with either one of them independently or together with both of them for like a sit down guitar session and just to write and hang out and introduce each other to one another. Hoping, honestly hoping that like, hey, like maybe I can't be in this project, but you two will meet and can collectively start a black metal band, because I think you both are really good guitar players. I just don't know if I have the time to do it.
Right,
So
right.
I saw both of them, what they were writing and what they were playing, and I was just like, holy fuck, dude, you guys are like actually writing like really cool material. And I would say Theo's, again, like he's more in a like an atonal kind of jazzy, if you will. I mean, it's not truly jazz, but it's more like hardcore and more in the dissonant vein, where Clay would be writing more melodic death metal, melodic black metal style, more like classical sounding stuff, but very aggressive. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, let's put it all three of it together and let's get together and just kind of put this, see what we can do with it. And we ended up doing it. And we met with the drummer for a couple sessions, just me and Theo the first time. And then I brought Clay in like probably on the third or fourth session. And it was interesting what we did. It was like, when you get together and jam, if you will, to call it, what it really was. Sometimes it just sounds like garbage, and it's just fun because you're hanging out with friends playing guitar, but something evoked something. I was like, well, that's pretty, like, it's interesting what everyone was doing. It was kind of one of those, we kind of found our places pretty organically, where I was trying to like not step on their toes. They were both kind of independently doing their own things and creating some kind of interesting shit, and I was like, well, hey, if we can control this, it's actually really cool. So that's how it all formed, as far as being a three-person guitar band, because I mean it's not something that a lot of people really like or plan out. You're not like, hey, you want to get three guitar players together and fucking make our eyes fall out from the bullshit that we're playing, you know what I mean? Like, it's a really
hey man, I've been in a 3-guitar band and I think it's fun as shit.
It is, like, and it is when you're doing I'm sorry to cut you off, but it is when you're doing like traditional music, like Leonard Skinner stuff, because it's it's just layers of like really beautiful stuff, so.
Or the eagle, just different shapes on the same roots.
Yeah, and they're just
right.
Like as far as like creating it, it's ridiculous because I'm like, I don't know where I fall into this fucking riff, you know what I mean? So it's like, but a lot of times, I think that the 3-guitar player thing is, it's what Iron Maiden, it's. Well, you said the Eagles.
Man, Dragged in the Sunlight, fucking, I think they have 3 guitarists.
Yeah, so it's something that you don't see a lot, but it's been very cool to be a part of, because it's something I've never done before. I've never been in a band with more than one other guitar player.
Now you experienced a little resistance from the label that you were originally interested in. We don't have to drop names or anything like that, but you experienced a little resistance to that idea initially.
Talk about it.
Yeah, we can talk about it. Yeah, I think it was really hard.
I'm not trying to put anyone on blast.
No, of course. And the people that know, and I have no resentment towards this guy. I mean, I understand the project was challenging, but it was really hard to, during a pandemic, during the pestilence, if you will. It's what I've been labeling it, because it's what it fucking feels like. And to get together remotely, where one member could not come to rehearsals because he had a daughter that was asthmatic, and it was just as a family decision. They decided, hey, like, we're not gonna, we don't want to expose anything. We don't want to be around too many people. So while we were finishing and writing this album, we the main dude, like, he's the one who like kind of got us all together, and one of the main writers couldn't be there for a lot of it. So there was a lot of arrangements and songwriting and tracking as a collective group that was done kind of how we're doing it today, where we're not in a room together. We're doing it either over the phone, sending emails, or just videos of us playing the riffs, trying to get it together.
Or that one Skype practice.
We try to do a Skype practice, or no, we try to do a Zoom practice. So there's always like these really hard challenges that, honestly, like, being in a 3-melody band, a 3-guitar player band where you're trying to do 3 independent melodies is a fucking nightmare. Even when the 3 of us are in a room together trying to get that stuff arranged right. But then to throw in this extra convolution of like, hey, we can't actually be in the room with Theo. It's me and Clay working on these parts, and we're like, that sounds really good. I think it's going to work over Theo's part. We send him the parts, he puts his part on it, we tack it together, and we like listen to it, and we're like, oh fuck, this is like, we got to like start over. And then we become very daunted or it's so daunting to do it. We brought that within to the studio that we recorded at. We brought all of those challenges and those issues, and I think it was interesting. It was one of the first times I've actually ever been to a recording session where I was not ever with another band member through the whole process.
Ain't that a trip? Ain't that a trip?
It's a trip. You know, every project that I've ever been on, it was, you know, me and the guitar player showed up together, me and, you know, all of us showed up and tracked, you know, to do a scratch track for the drummer. There was a lot of more camaraderie, if you will. And then this time it was all peeled apart and it was kind of like, I was like, oh shit, do I actually know any of these songs? You know what I mean? Like, it was like, you know.
So who does it start with? Like, does it start with one part and then you guys all build on top of that?
Yeah, so typically it's.
Yeah, tell me where it starts.
It's changed, actually. There's been a couple of cohesive songs where we've written together and they've been phenomenal because we kind of have now found our traction and where we want to be in the song. And we've even figured out that, you know, like I'll be playing mostly rhythm, you know, and step away and do some melody stuff. But, you know, I'm keeping it kind of straight with the drummer. And then, so it originally started off by just having a song fully written by Thea, who's like one of the main songwriters. And then we would add parts to it. And then
then are you jamming together as a group now?
We have had a few sessions, but because we've been trying to get this record put together, it's been, you know, it's hard, you know, it's like we don't want to lean too much into the black metal dad thing because it's just kind of like, you know, we want to poke fun a little bit, but we also do want to be serious. But it's the black metal dad thing is like what we giggle about because, you know, we all have kids. Every one of us has a kid.
It's true. Yeah.
We have child care.
Rock dads, more rock dads.
You know, so we all have a lot of going on in our lives. And so even to get together for 6 people to go get a coffee is pretty challenging, to even get 6 guys together to like play music every single time. And I know you know that challenge, Aaron, because it's you can only admit.
Yeah. No, actually, I just talked to Ty today, where it's like, so basically, what I told Tony is I was like, look, man, I mean, we're not going to be doing anything for a while. You know, we're not going to be able to play for close to 2. I'm going to be 40 next time we do a show, unless this Rose Tattoo show in January by some miracle still happens. Pretty much we're not going to be doing anything until I'm fucking 40, man. Like, it's going to be a while.
Dude, we thought we were going to play our first show like forever ago. You know, it's like, it's wild. You know, like, shit.
Yeah, and so I told Tony, I was like, hey, man, you know, I'm playing guitar every day. I suck now, but, you know, here in a year, I might be able to at least play the rhythm parts and stuff like that. So maybe I should start learning it so I can do second guitar or so I can at least conduct rehearsals. And then today, just on a whim, I hit up Ty and I was just like, hey, man, do you just want to start getting together again and just playing even though there's like nothing, and just go at it like beginners, you know, go at it like a almost like a band getting it together for the first time. You know, it's a different way of doing things now, and people have had to adapt.
If I were to give you some words of encouragement, I would absolutely say that, you know, rhythm is such an important aspect of any part, you know, and if you can get down with your drummer and sit down and even write the bones of a song, it's only more work that you carved out for Tony and, you know, even Logan or whoever. It's just to have it there. It's so constructive no matter what, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I would say definitely embrace that as much as you. I've seen you on your videos. Yeah, I mean, the dude sounding good, man. I mean, you're singing and playing, and I mean, sounds great.
I mean, it's just going to take time to get from campfire strummer to like actually being able. The other thing is that I'm used to a certain standard from playing with Tony and Logan and Ty for so many years that I'm not going to get on stage with a guitar plugged into an amplifier until I'm at a certain skill level. But I take your point. I was mostly bringing that up because I take your point on, like, you know, the black metal dad thing and like trying to fit it in and make time for it. And it's like, you know, the podcast once a week and coming up here soon, having practice once a week just for fun is like, it takes a lot of effort to slice out that chunk of time to make it work. So all you guys have kids? Everybody in the band?
All of us.
Every one of us does.
All 6 of you dudes have fucking kids. That's great.
Yep.
Josh, how many kids you got?
Just one.
You got one? How old?
Yeah, he just turned 4.
Oh, that sounds so fun. That sounds so fun. I'm already talking about wanting another one. Yeah. Already talking about it. So, and that's really funny to go to that like kind of tender spot when you're talking about like dreadful, mournful, like extreme
right.
blackened music.
Anti-causal, just like depressive nonsense. And hey, by the way, here's a picture of my son.
Yeah, totally.
So, but that brings me to something that I was thinking about before earlier in the conversation and escaped me is, can we drill down a little bit into the process that you guys are doing? Because I'm a little unclear. You were saying initially it started out as the main guy would write something and you guys would build on top of it, but now you guys are writing together. So if you're not all getting together in the same room on a regular basis, what does writing together look like for you?
What we're doing is we're writing.
That's a good question.
It's a good question because actually
awesome.
it's interesting because Clay and I, even our melodies that we'll put together, it's almost like it's really indicative of what Theo can do on a guitar because there is.
Well, I mean,
we'll put together
like some other stuff with like Clay's lead on that one thing.
Yeah, I mean, so it's just been all over.
I mean, it's all over the place.
So there's been some times where we get together and there's the four of us and we'll write something, where it's like bass, and it's not even bass, so it's like two guitar players, a singer, and the drummer, and we get this song that's like, we're like cohesively, we're like, that's a fucking song, you know what I mean? Like now we just got to envision where these other parts are going to be, and we, because of this band couldn't exist not in the modern age because we couldn't be like record the things that we would record and send them to someone so quickly. Well, it's still a fresh idea for them to say, oh, let me just jump on my computer and throw something over that and see what you guys think.
So are you guys sending back and I guess I should specify, and you've listened to the show a bunch, Gianni, so you know that Gordo and I like to get into tech stuff a little bit from time to time.
Do the tech talk.
Yeah, do the tech talk. So break it down specifically as to like are you guys doing just like voice memo recordings and sending them back and forth, or is somebody building them in like GarageBand or another DAW?
So much nicer.
We actually.
Okay, so dude, that's what we want to know. Let's get into the tech talk. What are you guys using? What are the tools you're using to facilitate your work?
I'm gonna show Josh. I'm gonna just explain to Josh where the bathroom is. It's just gonna go in and then go to that first door that's right here.
Okay, now everybody knows where. Dude, now everybody on the internet knows where your bathroom is.
Yeah, are you sure you want to divulge that information? I mean, that's pretty private information you're divulging.
You're going to wake up with one of your towels used to wipe someone's ass, and you're going to wonder why.
That's actually a fucking nightmare, dude.
Somebody wiped their ass with my Dead Milkmen shirt when I lived at 1083 Colorado Boulevard when I was a wee shaver.
Well, that's just a travesty right there.
Well, and I didn't throw the shirt away is the gross part. I just washed it a bunch, and forever, the entire time I had that shirt, it had an irremovable doo-doo stain in one of the lower corners of the shirt.
Well, you know what? That is textbook punk rock I've ever heard.
It's probably the most punk rock thing I've ever done, and it all goes downhill from there.
That's like a full point.
That's like a full point.
Because punk rock points aren't like where you get a collection of them. It's actually more like with the recording point that you get, like the
it's like getting your blue belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's like, you can get a quarter of a point for some shit, but like, a full point's pretty big.
Yeah.
But no, so what was it? We were on something. We were on something.
Yeah, tech talk.
No, you're talking tech talk, man.
How are you building your soundscapes?
Yeah, so what we've actually been doing is everything from iPhone videos to true, like, I guess I describe them as stems, I think is what you kind of describe them as, where it's an actual piece of music recorded through like a DAW or whatever and sent to someone that they can use their software to adjust it. So we're fortunate in the sense that we have two legacy sound guys in the band, and they actually, we actually tracked what we're doing right now. Just in his home studio, and it's actually pretty good. And it's like, honestly on par with some of the stuff that we were doing in the actual brick and mortar studio that we were at. But as far as sending stuff around to one another, it is really nice that we live in this age where, you can get like one of those $100 interfaces and plug into GarageBand and like actually put something viable on to the tracks, or even send it to someone who knows what they're doing, and they can then throw it on and kind of piece it together for us. And I think that's kind of where the world's going. I think that everyone is figuring that out, and that's why you're seeing a lot of bands put a lot of really cool stuff out.
There's been a rush to update the industry.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like there are people's, for as much as the music industry has changed, or the entertainment industry has changed, there's still a ton of money in it, and a ton of money and a ton of people's jobs and livelihoods tied up in it.
Yeah.
And so there's been this scramble to just like make these advents by leaps and bounds, and it's been really, really fascinating to watch. But it's cool to see so many more bands starting to do this thing that maybe only the more tech savvy bands were doing before.
The price tiers have come to where it's under $1,000 to even just set up if you wanted to just do a DAW now, you know what I mean? Which is wild. I remember when I was
you can get Logic for free, can't you?
Yeah, I think
GarageBand comes with every Mac and iPhone.
Yeah.
And you can get Focusrite makes an interface. I have one.
$120. Do you have the
Focusrite Solo or whatever it's called, where it plugs right into an iPad or iPhone? Yeah, I've got.
That's probably something I'm going to actually acquire here for my birthday coming up. Yeah, you have
this
the
moment.
So you have the
recording right into this fucker right here.
Yeah, and I think it's just one of those things where it's less expensive than your guitar. It's less expensive than like even a couple mics. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy to see, and then everyone's pretty savvy with
I've actually moved beyond guitar. I don't even play guitar.
Sort of. Hey, you got a message a while ago when I was driving in like a really snowy climate, and I was listening to Granny tweet, and I was like, I think I even sent you a message or tagged you like on an Instagram post, and I was like, dude, this fucking song right now was like meant to be my ears, dude. And it's like, it's just one of those things where like it's so nice to live in this world where we can like just absorb each other's creativity like this way, Like
it's pretty cool.
Man.
That record I really like, Porto. I want to tell you that, man. Like it comes up on my mix every now and then. I'm like, God damn. Same with
Dude, we all listen to our friends' music. We all listen to our friends' music, and whether it's good or not, we encourage them to keep going. You know what I mean? But I legitimately love what Gordo produces out of his studio. I legitimately think that I legitimately think Granny Tweed in general is a brilliant band, but that new album is so fucking good, dude.
It really hits me. It hit me a couple. I can't remember the song off the top of my head, but I sent you like a Instagram on it, and I was like, dude, this song, fuck. It was just like really good arrangement, dude. It was something that I was like, God damn, it's like, we're lucky to be in Colorado with the peers that we have. There's a lot of there's some hard hitters out here, man.
This scene is I've spent some time in some other scenes as well, but like, this one is by far my favorite, I gotta say. Like, just like all sorts of great musicians and
big time.
It's definitely a great time to be a Colorado musician. Blood Incantation. Of course, the pedigree of like Cephalic Carnage.
Yeah, of course. That's like the OG kind of
Blood Incantation. That's like one of my favorite albums right now, dude. I can't get over it.
It comes on and I'm like, is this Morbid Angel? I was like, what? I don't remember this Morbid Angel song. And then I'm like, holy shit, this is like the dudes I know. Like,
it doesn't even stop there. Of Feather and Bone. When I first got into like cavernous like black metal, cavernous like death metal, like it was like, oh well, you got to listen to Tumult and of Feather and Bone.
We're getting ready to have Alvino on the show here soon, actually.
Oh, yeah. I love that guy, dude. As far as him, he was another one of the people that I got to, do some ear molds on when that band was forming. And we went to college together and everything. And we played a show with them at the Black Sky when I was in Dead Temple. And dude, to see where that dude grew from. And we even played shows together. What's that? The old venue that Killing Joke used to run. It was like a garage, like.
What?
Not Killing Joke. Sorry, that's a famous band. There's a Denver band that's killing something, dude. It's like some hardcore band. God damn it.
Killing Kings.
Killing Kings. Yep, them.
So like, Joey Chase's old, or not Joey Chase's old band. The guys from As We Speak. Killing Kings was Steve Beam, right?
I can't remember. I don't think I knew them. They were just these older guys who had like a. I'm
gonna sound like a total asswipe. One of my friends is gonna comment here any minute and be like, "Dude, I can't believe we played shows together."
Yeah, you got this child on your show who doesn't know who anything is. Like, but so we played a show with Albino's like original bands that were like these hardcore bands, and they were like we were also in a hardcore band, and to see Albino go from playing melodic hardcore to like one of the crushingest fucking death metal bands I've ever heard, that like really is like internationally.
That's something we're very fortunate to have in Colorado in general, in Denver in general, and I think I think it comes from having roots in a somewhat isolated scene.
Yeah.
Because people pass through here a lot, and while Denver is, now considered a major market, I feel like when we were kids, it was a stop off.
Totally.
No, 100%.
I remember I remember people being like, can you believe Ozzy skipped Colorado? You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, in like 98, 99, we're like, dude, we really don't even, like, people are skipping us on, like, national tours. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't even...
It takes a long time to get here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Meanwhile, I was coming up in Kansas. And I was coming out here to see shows.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dude, totally. I mean, it's always had a very transient nature, Denver has. But, the closest major markets to us are Albuquerque, Kansas City, maybe Lawrence, but I think Lawrence is more considered of like the college market, so a lot of people skip Lawrence.
Well, we're still respectively an island, kind of, right?
Yeah. So what my point is because of that, but because it's a major hub and there's a lot of people here and there's a lot of people who end up here, the underground music scene, at least as I remember it, it couldn't afford to be segregated.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, there were the handful of clubs that local independent bands had to play, and because of that, you played with everybody. Fourth-year freshmen did shows at Sock's Place with all those fucking hardcore bands you're talking about.
No, I mean, that's a great point too, because like Lightning Bolt played at Monkey Mania, if I'm not mistaken.
Dude,
at
Monkey
some
Mania
point
was a
in time.
cool place to play.
Like when I was thing, if they're not still a thing anymore, I don't know. It's been a while. I'm a dad now, so I don't really go out.
Yeah, I mean, I played with so many weird types of bands in the early stages of our band. So like, you see, someone like Alvino, and you see him go from the roots of what he was doing and being in a melodic hardcore band and whatnot, and just over time, it's inevitable that there's going to be cross-pollination and he's going to be drawn to different things because we're exposed to so many different genres. That's been one of the things. Yeah, that's
like I think that makes a lot of sense. Especially looking at a lot of popular, like, true and dank metal that comes through that comes out of Colorado, like oh man, who's the newer project? They have a Dennis Forkus piece of art for the album art. It's members of like Primitive Man and Blood Incantation and like Spectral Voice. God, this is gonna drive me crazy.
Yeah, that's what I initially thought was Glacial Tomb, but I don't think that's it, because that's.
It's the main thing I remember about them is Dennis Forkus, who
I was going to guess Spectral Voice, because that was like
it's not Spectral Voice, but members, or at least a member of Spectral Voice is part of it.
Something deity.
I mean, honestly, it doesn't matter. Like, I mean, any of those bands I named, like, they take so much influence. There's so much fusion that I feel like comes out of Denver and Colorado as a whole.
Well, and in independent underground music in general, because if you go on tour, if you guys went on tour, we are going to play in the same clubs.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
We're going to play in the second, third tier rock clubs. Yeah. We're going to be playing in the Three Kings of State X.
Oh, rest in peace, Three Kings.
Yeah. Well, hey, on that note, we can go a little side tangent real quick. What are your guys' thoughts on HQ?
Sounds cool. I actually heard someone was telling me about it. Who was I with just recently? I was actually, so remember I told you I was doing Ruben from... Yeah,
Ruben, friend of the show. Former guest, we had him on here. That was a fun episode for those who remember Ruben eating a cup of.
Remembers it.
Yeah. Karen Kuda remembers him showing up to band practice stoned out of his gourd after I gave him ice cream.
It was cool to get to know him via your podcast and then meet him in person, dude. Like, it was like such a trip, you know what I mean? Because I never met him before. And
I just knew him casually from shows and shit, honestly.
I had seen Reno Divorce, but I never knew him or anything. He was a little bit older, so it was one of those I just didn't know him kind of thing. And it was a cool experience to actually like be like, hey, dude, like, and we would talk about stuff, and I was like, oh, I kind of know that because of the podcast, and it's like, you know, dorky.
No, you got to hang out and talk to get to know people. Like we saw each other around the scene for years, and it was always like over time you'd begin to recognize each other.
Yeah.
But until he came on the podcast and we really started getting to know each other, you know, I mean, Johnny, the same goes with you and me. I mean, we had talked and hung out and had beers and things like that, but we really became friends, in my opinion, when you came on the podcast.
Black Curse. Okay, the band that we were talking about earlier was Black Curse. We used the internet to figure that out.
Yay, internet!
Curse. All
and
right.
I think that's actually Zach from True's band, isn't it?
It's a bunch of people.
I think so.
It's
He
like
might,
huge
if he's listening or
fusion
someone
Thundercats.
says it, you know, whatever.
That's cool.
Big shout out, Love Dennis Forkus, dope album art.
Yeah, we do have. So, we were talking earlier. We do have some album art to share.
Oh yes, let
and
us
the name of
plug
the
her.
album and stuff.
Yeah.
We'll do that whenever you feel organic.
Yeah,
right?
just send it over to me real quick, and I'll pull it up in here. If you want, you can even text it to me, and I can airdrop it to my own computer.
Use your technology.
Use the technology. But we were talking about HQ. We were talking about that place opening up, and
so Logan told me he was talking to someone about it and saw some innards of it. I think it's actually, I mean, I can't believe they gutted it. I saw that picture of Jim Norton standing in front of the kind of the remnants of what
you mean Jim Norris, not Jim Norton the comedian, Jim Norris, the former
Jim Norris. Edit that, get that in post.
I'm like, what was Jim Norton doing in town?
So
go and take two.
He's being maudlin about like Denver clubs.
Yeah, I'm blowing it, dude. I'm like losing all kinds of those punk points we were talking about. So
you got to bring your notes.
Yeah, so I saw that picture of Jim, and it was completely gutted with Peter Orr, and I can't not think of the other.
Scott Howell is the other guy.
Yeah, and I've met all of them. You know, it's kind of hard to remember anyone's name, I feel like, but I saw the pictures of it completely gutted, and it's like, well, like, wow, we really have to put trust into this because, you know, you just literally pulled out the memories of, like, you know, fucking half of our scene, you know, but I think that it's in good hands. I mean, I think those are two of the like really good promoters in town, and I think that it's going to be something really cool. I'm excited to go there.
That has to happen. You know what I mean? It has to get gutted.
Yeah, it has to. I mean,
it all has to get pulled out and become something different because it's not Three Kings.
Yeah, and exactly. They can't just reopen a different Three Kings because everyone's just going to bitch about it being not the same Three Kings.
Exactly. They're going to be like, the old way was like this.
Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, no, I get it, but it was kind of one of those, like, oh my God, it's like, there's like nothing in there now. It's like the stage is even yanked out. Like, I was like, wow. And that was fast. You know, it was like, you know, that updated photo kind of tripped me out. But, you know, that's like anything with those kind of changes. Any of that like draw to nostalgia or like desire for nostalgia when those things, when they change, you know, you're just like, fuck, well, I'm glad there's a Facebook group to look at pictures of us there, I guess. You know what I mean?
A buddy.
It's kind of exciting to think about, like, you know, completely, you know, gutting the place and being able to kind of re-envision, you know, another independent music venue. It's going to be one of the only few remaining independent music venues.
Right. Well, and so I actually got to talk to Andy Burkaw from the Oriental Theater, another former guest of the show, good friend. Because I had just heard, I didn't even read the Westward article, but I had heard about the Westward article that said that the Oriental was taking it over. And Andy said, yeah, no, I mean, honestly, Westward kind of misreported that. It has nothing to do with me or Scott LaBarbera. You know, Scott Howell and Peter Orr are doing that. They're going to win a partnership together, and we've had a discussion about making sure that we're supporting each other, essentially. that one doesn't interfere with the other. But no, I mean, when we were talking about it, he really has a ton of faith in Peter and Scott because they do such amazing things for the Oriental, and they both, that place really needed a fresh perspective.
Yeah.
Just having worked there in the short time that I did, I know how much running a place like that can grind on the people who are responsible for it.
Oh, dude, I have a story I can tell you. I want you to finish your point, but I'll tell you something.
No, I mean, and that's kind of my whole point is that I think it's great that they went in there and they gutted it out and they're updating it and they're getting all the infrastructural things worked out. The electrical and the plumbing, and they're going to go in and they're going to do a complete rejuvenation with the spot, and at the very least they'll salvage the energy of the place. I'm hoping.
I believe it. I think they'll even, they've got that whole downstairs area, and that green room is just, top notch. I mean, it's got such good bones that it's just gonna. I can only imagine it being flourishing from what they were saying. But to go back to that point where you were talking about, like, when you were working there was an incident where with the Dead Temple days when I had booked a show, and that's kind of how Three Kings worked, right? Like, you could just like fucking call a bartender and be like, hey dude, what's going on Tuesday night? And they're like, I don't know, something.
Right.
Like, hey, it's cool if Dead Temple and this other band plays, and they're like, yeah, totally, that's fine. And you're like, okay, cool. And then so you show up, and it's like it was Shelly Shellhorn, or Shelly, she was DJing. She had like kind of a weekly DJ night. We showed up there.
Yeah, she was doing my Tuesday nights.
Yeah, so we showed up unbeknownst to her, like cut her out of the entire night, to the point where, like, no one could justify paying her, and we played a show that night. Like, we were friends, good thing. It wasn't like something where like we were some stranger band that walked in there and did that. But that was like kind of one of those, I was like, holy shit, we just kind of like barged into Three Kings, played a show, and this is probably one of the more respected venues in town, and it was not really organized, and it was kind of, I could see the panic of everyone that was working there that night to figure it out. The sound guy that thought that he was just simply throwing one mic up there for some DJing, that had to now figure out how to mic like 3 or 4 bands that were just kind of.
Oh man, this isn't a show that I booked, is it?
I don't know. I
I hope not.
I don't know if I reached out to like, maybe Lisa. I don't even know. I have no idea. I like literally know that we
Lisa, yeah.
I feel like we sort of just like, I just sent a Facebook message and asked if we could play a show, and we showed up. So it was like, and it's one of those things where I could see kind of the panic and the stress on people while we were there. It's a really fun show, and it actually worked out okay. And we ended up giving, I think we ended up giving some of Shelly some of her merch because, we felt bad about it. I mean, it was really like we took like one of her like nights where she was getting some extra money, like, and just kind of just bum rush the stage in a way.
Well, so the thing that place had that was amazing and unsustainable was that it functioned like its own organism.
Yep.
You had multiple people that had access to the calendar and the email, and it was kind of just like first come, first serve. Whoever blocks it out gets the night, and
right.
And there were oftentimes the three owners had their different nights of the week that they were there, their different days that they were there from, open to close or part of the day, or they were the responsible party for that day. And then you had the different managers who had the different nights and the different crews who had the different nights. And it was not uncommon for one hand to not know what the other hand was doing, and for things to, a double booking would happen once in a while. I mean, for the most part, they did a pretty good job of keeping it tight, but there were times when, things would overlap.
Yeah.
And but for the most part, it just like, it was its own animal. It was its own spirit. Yeah. No, I mean, and it was beautiful for what it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the most influential club in this region of the country. And it's one of the most influential clubs in the country as far as I'm concerned. Like an amazing place. But it'll be cool to see people like Scott Howell and Peter Orr go in there, because they like they run things in a, I don't know, in a much more top tier music business kind of way.
Oh, I agree. I mean, think about like what Peter Orr did with Streets of London. I mean, when he first got his hands on that thing, I mean, it was those books were unbelievable. I mean, the Every Time I Die show that sold out in like 3 seconds, and Converge. This is crazy. Like,
and then bringing Morbid Angel and Cannibal Corpse to the Oriental Theater, which was a fucking amazing show.
Yeah,
dude.
that was actually a Feather Bone played that one, right? That was like
yeah,
I was
they did.
But that was dude.
Sarah was 9 months pregnant, and I was eating chicken wings in the lobby with my Belgian friend Dion. Like, you can't make that shit up.
That's hilarious.
It was fun, man. You know, like it was. Yeah. He and you know, Scott, of course, has done his stuff with the Carnival de Sensual and running the bodega and really doing just so much work for the Oriental. You know,
they is the top, man. I mean, that place is now. I mean, I remember it was. I've always liked it because of its setup, but like the last few shows I've been to, I've been like, this is a different vibe, different brand venue. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, yeah. I mean, I'm excited to see what happens. I'm excited to play there eventually, but I'm doing my best to go in there without the expectation that it's going to be Three Kings 2.0.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a good way to look at it. I still haven't been to the other new venue that was it Globe Hall? Is that the name of it?
Oh, Globe Hall.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Globe Hall, but are they associated with Globe Hall?
No, not in any way. I'm just saying that there's like these newer venues that are like kind of popping up now, and it's kind of where like, you know, you got to kind of take some of that like, hey, I grew up in the scene, and like now I know everything, and I'll be like, this is a new place to go see, which is exciting, but also like, you know, you got to shed that jacket of clout, I guess, you know, where you're like, I've seen blah, 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 and I played here. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just this, like, new frontier, I suppose, you know, which is interesting, and it's pretty cool.
The one thing that I hope is I do have concerns about whenever there's a changing of the guard, it is easy for the old bands that were tied to that space to stay tied to the broader scene. Like if one connection gets severed, it can sever the ties of a bunch of different bands from the scene at large. Like, let me give you an example of this. Like when Westward changed hands, like anytime a new music editor comes in and out of Westward, and if you're in a band and if you want to get coverage by the Westward, you have to go out of your way to start a relationship with the new writer or the new head of the new music editor. Like we were friends with Dave Herrera for years, and he would hook us up with all kinds of stuff and write about us, and the other writers that were part of his era knew us and were familiar with us, and even if we were just the shitty local band, they would throw us a bone because we were part of the scene. Then when he left and someone new came in, it was a little harder to get the pieces written because I had to start a new thing. And then the Westward Music Showcase kind of changes, you know, and you go from seeing bands from this certain pool of venues playing the certain stages at the Westward Music Showcase, and then someone else comes in. And do you know about like the Westward All-Stars thing? We've talked about it on the podcast before, but do you know about that?
No, I mean, Westward, even the showcase itself, you know, was something that like I played a couple of times, and I was actually always kind of like just tripped out how it all worked. You know, I mean, I didn't understand how we even got the show sometimes. We even got voted like we won something one year, you know. I mean, like it was just kind of this like.
Well, it's because all the writers are part of a certain time, a certain moment in local music culture.
Right.
You know, so the people who write for them are going to the shows.
Yeah.
So what the Westward All-Stars thing is basically all the bands that were part of the Dave Herrera era, of the local scene suddenly were told, like, hey, we're going to consider you among the Westward All-Stars, Westward Music Showcase All-Stars, and we're going to list you guys in this issue of the paper and basically thank you for your service, but we're going to move on and start giving other people a chance. So that's what they did, which is smart, and it's prudent, and it gives new artists a chance. But it's an example of the changing of the guard, severing ties to a certain part of the scene.
Yeah.
So my concern with back to the point, my concern with any changing of hands in a venue is that those who were kind of attached to that old business, you know, might disappear from that area of the scene. You know what I mean? And maybe be relegated to a less visible place.
But what happens if you haven't appeared yet?
Yeah, right. If you
my band is just waiting to appear. We're just waiting to appear. We want to get to the place where we can appear.
Yeah.
So that's all we're trying to do.
Yeah. Same.
So I think we're okay. We're in a good spot.
We had some
because,
cool
you know, like
so
we've just been gestating. We're just gonna fucking pounce.
Everything is changing, and how so much that's coming out of Denver is such a fusion. I mean, either fusion or it's Chemist, because like what Chemist was in the role, like that. You good? Yeah. Chemist was in the mainstream magazine not too long ago, Rolling Stones or something.
Oh, they were in Decibel. They've been in Decibel a bunch of times.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were in Rolling Stone too. I mean, there's been a lot of great Denver bands that are getting tons of love, and you know, I keep track of Chemists, and they've been getting some amazing stuff. So I'm sure it was something like Rolling Stone.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm a loser. I don't really keep track of mainstream publications or hipster publications for that matter.
Or just publications. I don't really read.
If it doesn't come into my dank hole of illiteracy, then I don't really fuck with it. You know what I'm saying?
My dank hole of illiteracy. That sounds like Trump's next book, man.
Oh man, it should be. If it's not
title for something,
like
yeah,
Trump,
definitely.
if you use this title, I expect royalties.
Dank hole of illiteracy. Continue.
Though, God damn it, I'm so derailed. Seriously though, I feel like there's like such a fusion here, and it's just going to become more prominent with like how venues are being treated. I mean, we had that whole war on DIY scenes that happened not too long ago. Spots from Boulder.
Talk a little bit about that, because I vaguely know what you're referring to, but I'm not. I'm kind of vague on it. So let me know what you're talking about with the war on DIY venues.
Oh man, it's I'm sure not an expert on the matter, but a couple of years ago, across the nation, there was kind of like a huge issue with DIY venues, and I know that there's a huge problem with that one up in Boulder. And if I'm not mistaken, the one I'm thinking of, the name escapes me. Excuse me, I'm not really big in folk punk, but it was done by someone who is related to or has some correlation with Days and Days, that folk punk band. I know that was a big thing. And it kind of trickled down. I think Club Scum was affected by it. Don't quote me on that. Again, I'm not an expert on the matter, but my understanding was a lot of DIY clubs are affected in Denver. I know a bunch were affected.
Like they were getting shut down by.
Yeah, shut down or just had insane, unreasonable restrictions put on them. Again, this is coming from an outside.
What was the force that was shutting them down? Was like
that ghost ship fire in Oakland, that was a big deal. Like
yeah,
that kind of set off, like nationally, it kind of set off a lot of problems.
Yeah, I think that was a huge the sparking point of that. But
So wait, Gordo, can you clarify on that? This has missed me. Help me out here.
I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. There was a big big DIY venue, what turned into a DIY venue that was in, I believe it was in Oakland, out there. And what had happened is,
what was the name of the venue?
I think it's called Ghost Ship.
Ghost Ship Fire.
And there are a lot of people living there, and they had their own living space, just like a bunch of squatters essentially. But there was one guy who was kind of I don't know, in charge of the whole scene there, and they had really sketchy electrical going on, but they started having they did like art shows, they did all kinds of things there, but then it turned into a venue, and they were doing a lot of shows there, and they had a show one night where it turned out I don't know how many people it was, maybe between 100 and 200, something like that, and they had a fire and a lot of people.
Okay, so here it is. Ghost Ship Warehouse Fire. On December 2nd, 2016, at approximately 11:20 p.m., a fire broke out in a former warehouse that had been converted into an artist collective with living spaces known as Ghost Ship. At the time, the warehouse in the Fruitvale neighborhood of Oakland, California, was hosting a concert featuring artists from the house music record label 100% Silk. The warehouse was only permitted for industrial purposes, residential, and entertainment use. So of the 80 to 100 people attending the concert, 36 were killed. Wow. The deadliest in the history of Oakland. It was also the deadliest building fire in the United States since the Station nightclub fire in 2003, the deadliest in California since the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, and the deadliest mass casualty event in Oakland since the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. The Alameda County District Attorney's Office launched an investigation into the fire. Fire's causes. In March 2017, emails from 2014 were reported to have described serious electrical problems in the building. Ghost Ship's master tenant Derek Alamina and assistant Max Harris were arrested and charged with felony involuntary manslaughter. Wow. Both pleaded no contest to 36 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Jesus. In a plea bargain with prosecutors on August 10th, the judge overseeing the case discarded the pleas, and the pair were put on trial. If convicted, their punishment could have ranged from probation to up to 36 years in prison. Wow.
Yeah.
It's absolutely incredibly serious, and
the city of Oakland settled a civil suit with the victims and agreed to pay a total of $33 million, $9 million to one person who survived with lifelong injuries, and $24 million to the families of the 36 who perished. So
that sent out kind of like a domino effect.
Right. Then that sent a ripple across the country.
The DIY venues, and I mean, I'm not a fire marshal. I'm not an ethicist. It's hard for me to have an opinion on the matter, but I think that it's definitely, undeniably affected art that's come out from people in this day and age.
I mean, how could it not?
That's, of course, the main point that I'm trying to make. Be good or bad. I mean, venues are changing. People are changing. There's more of a focus, especially with the coronavirus. On top of that, to do DIY at home type deals, and it's really interesting to see what's coming out, and I'm absolutely fascinated to see what's going to come out after this.
Tony and I were talking about it the other day, and he called it the Great Band Wash of 2020.
Seriously, I'm
now
stop. I don't want to interrupt you too much, real quick.
No, go ahead. You're the guest, man. Interrupt all you want.
Do it.
At one point, we had discussed this. We were like, we were lucky that this band has been able to survive through the difficulties that it's had. And there's a lot of bands that aren't going to come out on the other side of this. And that's all I want to say. And if you can keep your mindset and keep going where you're going, I want you to go.
Well, I mean, that's exactly kind of what I'm talking about. But I'm starting to wonder if we're going to see the opposite happen. Now, I'll be honest. And the fact of the matter is that with everything going on, my priorities have been refining quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like I said, I used to be a major proponent for a social media plan and, this is what you do every day. This is what you do every week. This is what you do every month. But I have scaled back dramatically simply out of a desire to not feed the machine. Now, we are streaming this on our Facebook page.
Right.
I'm not a moron. I'm not going to cut ourselves out completely. I'm not going to delete any of my accounts, but I am really averse to feeding the machine with my personal life as much. You know, if there's people who follow our band branded content, you know, I want them to have access to it on whatever platform they're on. But there is a part of me that's very averse to feeding the machine right now, and I've been scaling down. And the thought has occurred to me that 2 years without playing a show, 2 years without seeing my bandmates, especially with kids happening and families happening and priorities shifting and all that, like, I can see how you would be taken out of the game. At the same time, there's never been more free time to just sit down and get down to basics and, like, learn something, or rather than rehearsing for a show, just like sitting down and writing, or
writing scales or putting it to a metronome or something like that.
Right.
It's like, I agree 100%. Good or bad, change is frustrating, and change is coming, and change has been coming. And I think that we have a lot to gain from that. We also have a lot to lose from it, but I mean, that's the nature of change.
I just wonder if we're going to see more bands get wiped out or more bands ascend to the next level in terms of their...
There's going to be a lot of both. I mean, I really do. That summer, it's going to kind of cash out the ones that were hobby bands that they couldn't really commit to being just a hobby, and the bands that are sincere are going to thrive a little more. And then there's going to be a lot of bands that are created because people are like, I had 2 months paid leave, and I picked up some things and met with a friend, and we actually wrote some stuff together, and we're going to continue to follow that passion.
I would agree with that 100%. Personally, just my 2 cents, which probably isn't worth much. I feel that
it's worth 2 cents. We all get 2 cents.
Yeah.
2 cents times 7 billion adds up to 14 billion cents.
True. But I feel like it's going to come down to it's just going to be changed. I think we're going to stay in a relatively same equilibrium, but there is going to be some new shit, and it's hard to predict what new shit's going to come out because it kind of comes down to a combination of luck, timing, and who is dedicated enough to put forth the energy in these times.
Right.
Without a quantum computer, how can you predict that?
I wonder, this is something that kind of popped in my head while you were talking about that, is I wonder if tech savviness by demographic, by genre demographic, is going to play a role. Like, I wonder if we're going to see a shift in which more traditional, purist, less tech savvy, more lo-fi instrumental styles of music are going to kind of, like the working class rock and roll bands where the dudes just get together and they jam. Like, I wonder if we'll see an end to that, but a proliferation of electronic music, hip hop, and techie metal, like the type of metal that you guys are doing, which is more extreme, specialized genre. Like, I wonder if we're going to see a rise in, like, I wonder if we're going to see the scales tip in any way.
Well, you know what? I think that Granny Tweed isn't going to get wiped out by any of this. We're going to get wiped on.
Yeah.
You're going to get wiped in.
Yeah,
we'll get wiped in too. Yeah,
I would, for like real talk, I would say I don't necessarily see, if we're talking about just a techie boom of DIY like bedroom and basement artists, I'm not necessarily saying I want to see it, but I feel like Gent would have a big boom. I mean, like Misa Mansour or whatever his name is, Bulb from Periphery, had a huge boom with that. And this is a great time for people to download Superior Drummer and like VST Blue or whatever that glitch drum program that Periphery and Animals Leaders use, and like sit there and watch Tim Henson from Polyphia and try and do fucking covers and shit like that. I feel like there's going to be kind of a proggy, glitchy, poppy boom. I would love to see more of like blackened, like textured brutality come out, but
I mean, I'll say
I gotta say my hopes aren't high, to be quite frank.
I mean,
and I think that's what's like awesome about us, is because we're taking this and we're pushing brutality forward.
Yeah.
See, I would disagree, because I mean, now that you're brutal, I mean, I agree with that. But, I would generally, I mean, and this is a generalization, obviously,
yeah, sure.
But some of the most extreme musicians that I know, some of the musicians I know that are into the most extreme types of metal and heavy music tend to also be kind of on the spectrum and kind of nerdy, and they tend to also like video games and science fiction and fantasy, and they tend to be the type of people who are more apt to be tech savvy and to be able to, and again, a total generalization, but there's something about the heavier and more extreme genres of music, death metal, mathy fucking prog stuff, like, I just feel like maybe those people tend to be more proggy than your average dude who's playing in a blues bass rock and roll band, or like a 3-chord punk rock band, or maybe a maybe even like a thrash metal band, that is more like
it's interesting. I mean, that's actually
garage genres, I would say.
I mean, I completely agree with the correlation, because that's, that's kind of how I am. Not to say that. I mean, that's really where a lot of my like interests lay. You know what I mean? But it is a funny to say that correlation. Yeah. So I guess I don't know why this popped in my head, but it made me think of, we're talking about these basement-y projects and these things where we're doing things that are not the typical performances. It's like, I'm sure you guys have seen the 2 minutes to late night stuff that those guys are doing, which is kind of blowing my mind that they're able to.
Yeah, I've only seen two minutes to late night as a brand. I'm not really familiar with their content. Tell me about some of the stuff that you've seen.
So it's actually a guy that was from Colorado. His name's Jordan, and he went out to New York, and they kind of built it together with another partner out here doing it. And they were doing just shows out of St. Vitus, and the St. Vitus show, they were just doing guests, and it was made to be like a, his persona is Arsenio Hall.
Yeah, Arsenio Hall, and he wears the corpse paint.
Everyone knows that. I'm sure everyone's seen that. But what they're doing right now, instead of like podcasting or even I think he's still doing some podcasting, but he's also somehow getting a lot of people collected to do cover songs in their house while quarantining, which has been very interesting, because it's like these bands from all over, it's all metal genre for the most part, but I'm blown away by the production on it. I can't believe that there's this many people that are like, hey, I got time to sit in my basement and just sit here and learn a Mike Patton song and like cover it, you know what I mean? So it's interesting to see where, when we are forced to not be able to go out and do our live performances, which is like most of our life energy, it's like one of those things where it's like, I'm doing everything I can to have my childcare correct. I want my job to be in line. I want money to be straight. I want, all the rehearsals in place so that when we go out and play, that's going to be what I want it to be, this performance that's going to be very rewarding, and not something what's the opposite, which is like the depressing performance when you go out there and blow it, right?
Right.
So they're taking that same energy and they're putting these different avenues. And it's interesting to see that, because it's something where it's like, that's going to create its own creative culture, because people are we're going to be able to go to bars, and we're going to be able to go to venues again. And we're still going to be like, hey, there's this other thing out there where people just put together these collaborative efforts. You know what I mean? Like, I could get you to sing a Dio song if I played some guitar, and, we found a different drummer and we did this cover in the same thing, and people would still be like just as interested in as if they would to go down to a bar and
Right.
watch us. You know what I mean? And it's less effort from the musician. I mean, it's not less. Actually, I don't want to say it's less effort. It's a different type of energy than it is.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a different type.
It's just a different type of energy. It's a different type of performance, and it's very heavily relied into the technology. And so there's, there is this whole like, the pestilence has come along and burned down the crops, and now we have to rebuild from what is left from the soil, and
Right.
it may be more beautiful than it was before. And that's how I've been going through all this shit. I mean, it's been hard. I think everyone has their challenges with what it's doing to us mentally, what it's doing to us socially, what it's doing to us, as far as our concerns about economics, concerns about all the politics stuff that's coming up. It's like we're all hoodwinked right now, and we're about to run into an election, and the political climate cannot be hotter. It's just, we are really at this like boiling point where we're in change. I mean, there's a lot of change going on right now, and I'm not a big astronomy person, but there's even the change of the Pisces to the dawning of the Aquarius, which is that song that everyone knows, the dawning of the Aquarius, where there actually is that we're going into a different epoch or whatever it's called.
Epoch, yeah.
Epoch, yeah. So there's all of these things that are, it's undeniable. I mean, really, it is undeniable, and so it's very interesting to be living through this at our age and at our time, and what all we're doing in our experimental and artistic endeavors, and trying to be creative and not be fucking completely depressed in this time. And
it's interesting too, because it seems like so many people have predicted it in so many ways, and it just feels like, even though it's terrifying, it feels like this natural thing.
Totally. And it's like people have been warning about this forever.
Like Hassan Minaj said the other night, he said, living through history kind of sucks.
Right? Dude, I was talking about this with someone. It's like we think of history as an abstraction.
Right.
It's like a thing that you read in your history book, and it's like, oh, that happened. That sounds crazy. Like you hear, you learn about the bubonic plague or the Industrial Revolution or the Crusades.
It fits so well with what we're going through right now, quite frankly.
Right. Oh, no, absolutely. Well, I mean, we're very, and we should say that we are very, very fortunate that we were not alive during any like that, with the exception of the AIDS crisis. Like, we have not been around for any of the worst pandemics that have happened in global history.
I was
like,
born in '91. This is my first pandemic.
Yeah, you know what? It's your first pandemic. Welcome.
Like, yay, thanks. I'm glad.
No, but I mean, like, we think of history as this abstraction, as this thing that happened to these two-dimensional characters in these books, and we know cognitively that those people were also humans, and they were our ancestors, but I think we like to think that, like, oh, it happened then and it is not currently happening. But history continues to unfold while we're living our lives, the same way it did to those people.
And again, this is from a dilettante view of the issue. The sociology of people is that of a toddler, essentially, and history is just constantly repeating because we as a collective are toddlers not learning the fucking pattern, and
Right.
we're going to keep doing this to ourselves.
Well,
And-
I would say we're starting to. I would say we learn the pattern with an ever increasing acumen. I think that I think that there's a strong argument for the fact that we are getting better and better at an accelerated rate, and civilization continues to improve at an accelerated rate.
I'd say that's 100% fair. That's a fair thing. I mean, like our whole mass stuff. Like, can you imagine the Karens of the bubonic plague era? I'd say that's a very fair point. We're at least bettering, but still as a group, like we group together, still have a very long way to go. And I don't know. It's such an interesting time of history, and I don't mean to sound selfish, but I'm so stoked to see the art, to see how people personally grow from this, to see how people decline from this, to see Oh yeah, the battery thing.
I mean,
But,
I'm super excited to see that as well, like how we improve. I
yes,
also wish that I could live long enough to see the ideology that evolves from this, like the global religion that evolves from this point in history.
oh for sure.
You know what I mean? Because
Hashtag
there's
bubonic Karen, man.
well, yeah, I mean that was like the bubonic plague is really when you saw the rise in mainstream religion because people became obsessed with the afterlife.
Almost definitely. The afterlife and miracle cures. No one wanted to pay attention to science. No one wanted to pay attention to putting in the work or anything like that. And it's sadly so relevant right now, but it's also wonderfully so much less relevant, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, I
it
mean,
totally does. It absolutely does. I'm just really, I think it's really awesome that we're gonna see, in my opinion, like, you know, we're already seeing a lot of people doing the DIY thing, you know,
Yeah.
even more. Like people are learning how to, you know, like they can't go to the studio. They're gonna figure out how to record an album. You know, they can't, like, maybe people are making their own clothes. They're making their own masks. They're figuring
Right.
out their own thing. It's like, I like seeing that kind of, you know, self-propelled art and creativity and, you know, entrepreneurship.
well, and
and all
it's
that
interesting to see
Yeah,
what's
that's-
important. It's interesting to see what's important to you when your options are limited to, relatively speaking, far fewer things.
Oh yeah, exactly. When it just comes down to you, when it comes down to what do you want to do, like I agree 100%. It's going to speak a lot historically of us as a nation, as a world, as a people, as a generation. How are we using this time?
Right.
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 Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah, man, and it's also we're fortunate in a way is that there are a few times in history where progress is rapidly accelerated in spikes, and it's usually because of some catalytic event.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, and it seems to happen maybe a couple times a generation, but at the order of magnitude that it's happening right now, it's just we're going to see transformation that probably under normal, like, plateau circumstances would take generations to unfold. You know, advents in technology, advents in medical science, in culture, in politics and policy, in, you know, in so many things. We're just going to see we've already seen so much massive change, for better or worse.
Just figured out how to make lasagna. It's really good too.
Who figured out how to make lasagna?
My neighbor across the way figured out how to make lasagna. It's amazing.
On that note, have you guys been spending more time with your neighbors than you were before? I want to know if this is like a thing that is a universal, or if it's just something that's happened with me and my wife because we're old and we have a kid
Speaking
now.
for me, yeah, I should say yes,
So I
absolutely.
actually moved in between the pandemic and the neighbors in Arvada. Yeah, I saw them and talked to them way more. And now I'm in Wash Park, Denver, and like these neighbors like don't even like look at you when you're like, "What's up?" It's like I'm like trying to give them like the "Hey, what's up?" You know, kind of like the
Right.
that, and like these dudes don't even fucking make eye contact. It's really different. So, but
I was
yeah,
gonna say it's the opposite for me. I'm a black metal vocalist, so obviously I don't want to talk to fucking anyone. This is perfect for me. Like, no one's on the road. I can hang out in my nice little dark dank hole. Like, perfect. Loving
And I
it.
swear to God, for like about 3 weeks around my neighborhood, everyone was building a deck. Everyone.
Oh,
It's
right.
Like you go on a walk around my neighborhood, and it's like there's just like pounding everywhere. Everybody's out there, all the kids, everybody, just everybody's fucking making a deck. And like I've seen so many people doing stuff, and I've been doing stuff outdoors a lot more, and that's why I've seen my neighbors and talked to my neighbors a lot more. It's like, see that rabbit? Yeah, that was a fucking huge rabbit, man. That's
Right.
amazing. You know, like, you know, there's this. We've had raccoon stuff going on that you can't believe back here. Like, like I'm not going to bore you with the details, but man, there's some crazy raccoon action happening in my backyard.
Right. That's juxtaposition right there. Like, how can you say boring with details and then crazy raccoon action? I have to know about this crazy raccoon.
Yeah, talk about the crazy raccoon action. What the fuck are you talking about?
Man?
We've had to literally, build anti-raccoon structures in our backyard. We've had this influx of. I was asking seriously, my neighbor. She laughed at me. I was like, "Do you think this pandemic and all this stuff going? Do you think it has anything to do with the raccoons?" Freaking out. And she laughed. She's like, I don't know about that, but you have had a lot of raccoon problems. I said, I know. How are you gonna prove there's no correlation, Mary? How are you gonna do that?
They thrive from disease. They're like, it only makes our little hands more nibble.
Or have you guys seen that meme that's like, this is all a conspiracy from yeast to make people make sourdough?
Oh, Gordo will talk about.
Yeah. I was gonna bring that up at some point because Gianni and I have been going back and forth about baking quite a bit, and he's you've started a few sourdoughs,
dude.
Dude, the starter was impossible, but I did.
Did you guys know there's a yeast shortage? Do you guys know about this?
Is there
conspiracy confirmed? Yeast price going up.
Yeah, I can confirm that.
Because there's a yeast shortage.
Really hard to find yeast.
I believe it.
So Sarah and I ordered a mushroom kit. We're about to get into boring married people like old guy shit. Like, Sarah and I got a mushroom kit on the internet. And we decided to get some blue oyster mushrooms for our first round, and they literally send you a box. And I gotta look this up so I can put it on the screen. But they send you a box with basically a loaf of decaying material covered in spores, and you grow your own mushrooms.
That's legit.
And we made. What did we do? Sarah brought home steaks, and I made steaks and smoked out the whole house. But then we broke off some of the blue oyster mushrooms and cut them down, threw them in a pan with some butter, and put fresh mushrooms on top of the steaks. And
nice.
Man, it's super fun. I'm trying to find this.
Are you foraging for morels in your garden?
Well, I mean, that's another thing is Sarah gardens a lot,
Yeah.
Sarah made some mushroom bread, and when she went to go make the mushroom bread, she came across the yeast shortage when trying to make that.
I found some, but it was only shortly after there was a really big shortage, and I just figured it was all solved. So I actually don't know about said yeast shortage because I was leavening some flours as we speak for a while. And dude, bread making's fucking hard. I was early in the pandemic, I was just gonna open a bakery, dude. I'm just gonna make fucking pretzels and croissants. And,
yes.
Ideology. And dude, it is that is a artisanal craft. I mean, it's what you put into it to make a loaf of bread is unbelievable.
No,
when you do a good one, it's
yeah.
cool. I mean, it's a really great feeling. And I think that's
easy breads. There's hard breads, but in
There's
general, baking is it's a scientific process.
Anything with using yeast is more it's more temperamental, and the temperatures and all those different things, more chemical. But that's interesting because it did. I mean, I feel like anything that's going on with the pandemic and the pestilences going on, is it did force us all to slow down and really kind of look at what things we enjoy day to day, without the bustle of running out the door with a cup of coffee and just being I'm gonna go fucking die for a factory. See you at 9.
Right. It's what I think. And this is another thing that I've been thinking about a lot. I really think that unless those who would rather see it not happen intervene in a cunning way, I would like to think that we're going to see some major changes in the workplace, just in terms of prioritize people working less. Go ahead, Gianni. What were you saying?
No, you were on the same point. It's I'm not working 8-hour days.
Yeah, dude.
You. you're paying me for 4 hours and I'm doing the exact same amount of shit. Because that's a lot of stuff that we've seen, I think, is that we can get a lot of things done and we don't have to sacrifice our fucking entire day for the workforce.
In a shorter amount of time, too. Like, we're seeing that happen a lot with school, where kids are doing these Zoom classes and they're done with everything in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So, like, 6 hours out of the day is all the social stuff. And, man, there are some ways in which I am turning into a crackpot, and I'm really starting to think about, like, homeschooling or alternative education, simply because, like, I don't see the point of locking a kid in a building for however many hours a day. I don't see the point in trying to hammer the same. What were you saying?
Too far. Now you've gone too far. Lock them in a closet as long as possible.
Well,
make them sit down with Gone with the Wind or whatever, and just like, you're gonna fucking experience this, okay?
Well, I mean,
more than that, they're locking down with Faulkner and Joyce. Like, you guys,
yeah, that too. That too.
Learn this.
Well, I mean, it's just, I don't think that. I've been listening to this episode of Sam Harris's podcast where he talks to this dude who is a geneticist, and they're kind of talking about different people's polygenic predilections, like how much is tied into genetics and how much we are predisposed to doing certain things based upon our genetics. And it's silly to throw people into a building and apply the same style of learning, applying the same material, when we could be figuring out what people have a natural predilection for and then really leaning into putting them in an educational experience that is going to develop them most optimally and most optimally for society.
I would agree with that 100%, that's ideal. But unfortunately, we don't have a political system that wants to benefit the education system. You know what I mean? If I didn't have my garbage personality, I would run for office, and education reform would be like so high up on the list, because I feel like so much of our problems would be solved if we had a better education reform. And I agree with that 100%. Like so many resources from private schools, and then there's also the resources of Montessori schools, which a lot of them are public, but I mean, not.
I mean, I think it's heading in the right direction, and I think, like, in the workforce, we talked about the workforce. The company that I work for, and I've mentioned multiple times on this show, like, their culture is unprecedented in my eyes. But some would argue that companies like Fire on the Mountain and Zingerman's, who actually do international trainings with restaurants, like, that is an emerging culture of, like, running businesses, restaurants in particular, in an unconventional way, and in a way that you treat your employees the way they deserve to be treated. And while I think that lobbying is always going to be essential, I think that there is more happening now as a result of this situation that we're in. And by this situation, I don't just mean the pandemic, but also the global civil unrest and the economic downturn. Like, all these interconnected problems are going to convert, and I like to hope, as an optimist, are going to net as some changes that would not have been able to happen through decades of lobbying. It's going to happen in a matter of a few years, just because of necessity.
I would hope that as well, but just because you brought up the culinary world, because you guys don't know me, fun fact, I've actually spent a large amount of my life as a cook and a chef.
Cool.
From Chicago to here in Denver. I've worked specifically here in Denver. Linger, Root Down helped open L5, Vital Roots.
Cool.
Steuben's, I've been there for a while.
Oh, cool.
And because you brought up the culinary stuff, culinary school stuff, Linger is a teaching restaurant where we would take in a lot of culinary students from I don't know, whatever the big culinary school is here in Colorado. I never went to culinary school. I was just a fuck up who needed a job that didn't drug test, and so that's how I got into it.
That's how it starts for most of us, right?
That's right, right. But I I feel like it's really interesting because it's such a divided world, and it's a world that a lot more people are getting into, like cooking at home, and it's there's going to be a lot of demand for it because so many people have lost their jobs in the culinary world with the pandemic. There's a vacuum right now. They're looking for people, but I don't necessarily, and it's just my personal opinion. Take it with a grain of fucking salt. I don't feel like it's going to be necessarily a positive thing. I feel like we're going to get a lot of people who aren't going to know what they're doing, who need a job, who are going to work for less than people who have worked in kitchens for an incredibly long amount of time and want to leverage the situation for more money. And I feel like we're going to see a dark age in restaurants, especially in Denver, because Denver's restaurant culture is really weird right now, and it has been before the whole, COVID thing. We've had a lot of shows come through we had a Top Chef come through not too long ago. Actually, someone I worked with, David, I forget his last name, but him and I briefly worked. He was from Madison 11 before he worked at Linger, and he went and won doing CBD infusions. That might make him easier to look up. He's an awesome chef. If you guys are listening to this, I wish I remembered his full name. Go look his shit up. Give him some love. But so we've got kind of a weird culture like that, but we're not really known as a culinary city. And now we have a combination of out-of-work cooks, restaurants with a void to fill, and a whole bunch of people who have been learning this in their free time who are looking to pivot or get a side job or, whatever. And I feel like we're about to have a lot of turmoil.
You think there's going to be a flood in unskilled labor? Is that like in the restaurant business? Is that what you're asserting?
A combination of flood of unskilled labor and a
drying up of opportunity for sure.
I think it's going to come down to more skilled labor because a bunch of restaurants opened up before this whole COVID thing happened. So there's definitely a labor demand, but there's not the money. And there's people who are actually trained and talented who deserve to be paid a certain amount who are not going to want to work for this, or they're going to want more power. And they're either going to be rejected or they're not going to care. I mean, there's a whole myriad of things, that could happen. But I think how it's going to boil down is we're going to see a weird fluctuation of restaurants declining, and then a pop-up of boutique restaurants that are going to fucking kill it.
Yeah. We're also going to see a lot of changes with the minimum wage hikes.
I hope so. I hope so. As someone who's a restaurant employee, someone who's worked 70-hour weeks at a fucking incredibly popular restaurant, won't say the name, but who's worked like insane amount of hours at an incredibly popular and successful restaurant in the city, and still wondered how I'm going to pay rent in a month.
My concern with the minimum wage increases, like, to me, it automatically as a fiscal progressive, just like, yeah, man, just like as someone who would be willing to surrender a 50% income tax if everything was taken care of. All right. So as someone who is a fiscally progressive person,
let other businesses fail. You know what I mean?
I'm concerned with the minimum wage increase that it's going to price people out. I think it's going. I'm concerned about a bunch of job losses, generally speaking, simply because of the fact that many restaurants, they supplement a lot of their employee income through tips. And if you have a huge increase, like the city of Aurora, I don't know what the outcome was, but the city of Aurora, they tried to vote to increase their minimum wage to something like $20 an hour. Like, it was a huge increase, huge. gigantic, to the point where it was like, if you do that, then restaurants aren't going to hire as many people, or businesses aren't going to hire as many people. You know what I mean?
Well,
and so it's going to drive up the unemployment rate.
Well, I
have a business model that I think might work, just in the personal entrepreneurial aspect. And Josh, you can tell me what you think about this, but I'm going to open up a line of food semis. And what that's going to do is basically the first one's just going to do nothing but 12-foot subs. That's all we're going to do. Because like semis are pretty huge. And I think that if we just do catering, 12-foot subs, and we start catering, because like eventually they're going to start having weddings again. I mean, we're going to see a lot of weddings coming up at the end of this thing. I think we should do food semis. The food semi just rolls up and feeds an entire city, 12-foot subs. I mean, you can take this idea and roll with it. It's not, I'm not gonna. It's not trademarked. It's not copyrighted.
Chef I worked with, like we stolen it. It's gone, dude.
Well, and I mean, you're joking, but we're seeing a lot of places that aren't going to be able to afford to do the brick and mortar thing.
No, like I mean, in all seriousness, like the idea of like a big food truck idea, I think that's phenomenal. Like I think that can help a lot, but it's so hard to speculate. The food service industry is such a unique monster. I mean, like it was originally born from the French Revolution. I mean, that's where restaurants started, was after all these fucking oligarchies were overthrown, and there were all these cooks and personal servants that didn't have shit to do.
Right. So they opened their own businesses. They started cooking for the public.
Pretend to be a king for a day. And then you have like America in the Depression, where tipping culture began. And then of course we have the drinking culture, like, because that's America's biggest culinary contribution is mixed drinks and bartending. Fun fact for those who didn't know. So there's like this weird kind of, I mean, we can get way like deep into it too, especially since like in this day and age, like we have like Vietnamese is really popular, and Vietnamese, of course, is predominantly French influence, although most people don't know that. But they didn't, sell their souls to the French, which is why it's so healthy and so easy to do vegan and gluten-free, because they didn't do bread, they didn't do fat, because that wasn't Vietnamese. But they took so many culinary techniques and flavor profiles, and that's what created modern Vietnamese cuisine. It's culinary is such a weird monster of a mixture of art and craftsmanship that it's just.
It really is a beautiful thing. Like, you hear so much. Maybe you don't hear it as much anymore, but there was a moment in culture where you heard so much about cultural appropriation, and I think that like a couple of the industries where that idea is celebrated and promoted is the music industry, of course, because you're borrowing from so many different places, and there have been artists who have been panned for that. But in food, like you look at Vietnamese food and it is French influenced. A banh mi sandwich, is necessarily served on a baguette with pate.
Yep. I mean, just to name a few, like, you look at, like, regularly, like, so much, and it's so hard to generalize. It's like saying Chinese cuisine. Well, there's a whole bunch of different states, and Szechuanese cuisine and Mandarin cuisine or Cantonese cuisine are fucking night and day. Like,
right. Well, and what correct me if I'm wrong here, but our understanding in the Western world of Chinese food is really like something that Chinese immigrants made for Americans. Like they made it for American palates.
Chinese takeout. Like you don't have like, for example, so Szechuanese cuisine is a passion project of mine because I love spicy stuff, and they have a concept which I am going to butcher the pronunciation for. I'm so sorry, any listeners who are listening who know the language, but mala fang, which is essentially, and again, probably butchering the translation, but my understanding culinarily translates to roughly heat, numbness, depth. And that's a huge Szechuanese cuisine. You want massive heat, a numbness of the tongue from like the Szechuanese pepper, and a depth of flavor that can transcend that. And again, I never went to that part of China to study it. Take it as a hobbyist view. Even though I cook professionally, I've never cooked professionally in, like, I never went to Szechuan to learn how to cook Chinese food. You know what I mean? So it's weird shit like that, and it's simultaneously frustrating and beautiful because it's easy to appropriate or steal, it's easy to borrow from, and it's also easy to do correctly, and it's easy to fail at. Like it's weird. Like it's a craft and an art. Like there's
well,
a right
and to tie it all together, okay. So you have this homage that you are doing to this very particular, very specific category of food within the category of Asian foods, within the category of traditional Chinese foods, and like you've got this passion project of this very specified genre of food, you know, that has its descriptive qualities in its name. And then you have Necrosophik Abyss, the band that we're talking about today. You have this very specialized genre of music that you are playing, but you're not going out there and trying to sound identical to the original in bands known from the inception of the genre.
No, most definitely, and again, tying it back into that culinary point, it's much like how I was describing food. It's art and a craft. Like guitar music is a craft. There's a theory behind it, but it's an art. Really.
What dish would Necrosophik Abyss be?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. That's like a magazine question.
Oh, what?
That's like a magazine. That's like what they ask them in them fancy rock and roll magazines.
We would be that Japanese dish, that live squid. You can look at it and be really douchey and say we're high class and sophisticated, but at the end of the day, we're fucking brutal and a reflection of human brutality and bullshit.
Yeah.
And death
So
is
some people would look at it and be like, "What is it? It's black! Oh my god!" and freak out. And other people would be like, "Yeah, that's black. That's awesome."
It's like I want to eat the squid because it's alive.
exactly.
I want to eat it because it's squirming around. I want to eat it because it's from the darkest, scariest, most abysmal parts of the ocean. And then it's like, you look at your band, you know, things are starting to make sense here. Things are starting to make... I feel like I'm really getting to know you here, Josh.
I think it's a beautiful thing because we have so many people from so many different parts, like walks of life, and it's not one person runs a band. We all come together. We have a lot of different ideologies, but at the end of the day, we have a massive similarity, and that's we have some poison we need to let out into the world to get out of ourselves.
Right.
And we have musical abilities. We have, so many of us, I don't, just like all my past projects have been no-name DIY punk bands in Denver, before I moved here. But there's clout, there's so much that comes together for a common goal that no one's necessarily in charge of. It's chaotic, it's beautiful, it's sheer emotion, but has that, like, we're not talking that page 99 or like second wave emo scrams view of passion. It's technical, we're tight, and we have our shit together,
right.
But we have so much emotionally to fucking drain. And I think the world's in a good place to hear our poison being leached out, so to speak.
It's like, you know, like if you listen to like Otis Redding, just like screaming his ass off, you can hear torment in there, and that it's almost a mode. You know what I mean? Like you might have like musical modes, or like a mode in film, or a mode in painting. Like I want to say that Otis Redding, you know, and really, really dark, despair-driven music like black metal are a part of the same mode in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? It's like it's almost Norwegian R&B
That's ABBA though. Oh, that's Swedish. Okay. This is why I've been talking for a while.
So tell me, guys. I'm gonna bring up your album cover here, and I want you guys to just tell us when we can look for it, what people can expect. Like, tell me a bit about this thing.
The fall or winter, I would say.
I'm not sure. So actually, you know what? So as far as the production goes, I think Josh is going to do vocals on Friday, I believe. So he's one of the last to do some stuff, and then Rick is the bass player, and he is the one who's been tracking this project. And they, I believe that they need to send the stems, which is a term that I recently learned from someone from MF Ruckus. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So we're going to send the stems to a friend of all of ours named Bart McRory.
Yay, Bart! Yay, friend of the podcast, former guest of the show.
Bart's going to actually be mastering the project. We're trying to get them. I think the deadline is this Friday, which would be the 25th, I think, or 26th.
27th, I believe.
And
check. I'm stupid. I don't
25th,
know
I think. And so Bart's then going to have his hands on it for a little while. Then we're going to get it together, and we're going to probably do some type of release of some sort. We haven't really got to that part yet, but I assume that we're going to try to get it out and kind of have it at least digitally available. You know,
I'm like, I just want to let you know, I've got the art on the screen up here for everybody to be able to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's man, I think I get an idea of what you guys are trying to do just with this cover here.
Yeah, so that is actually that's the other guitar player, Clay, that we're talking about. It's his wife has been nice enough to contribute.
Do we have her Instagram to plug?
Yeah, it's Jerry Ann Full. I'll send it to you. I'll tag you in it or whatever.
She's a phenomenal artist.
Yeah, she's a real good artist. They're actually both really good artists.
Yeah, Clay's also a really good artist. They crushed it.
So that's going to be the artwork, and then the name of the album is you know it. It's because it's
Falsifer 2020.
Yeah,
but in Roman numerals because we're cool.
Yeah, and explain Falsifer.
So Falsifer, to my understanding, this was, I named all the songs and I do all the lyrics and stuff. The album name was kind of a general consensus. I came late to the band. They had a vocalist before me, and I don't know what happened. I wasn't there, but I came in, and now I'm the vocalist.
Yeah.
But Falsifer was kind of the general idea, and my understanding of it is, specifically with the misspelling, it comes from the Necrosophik cult, which my understanding is an anti-cosmic or acausal cult. You know, the third dimension is and again, I'm a dilettante in the subject, like take it with a grain of salt. I'm not an expert, but
you're an expert at using the word dilettante.
I sure am, goddammit, because I'm not an expert in anything. Except for using the word on how to say I'm not an expert. But,
no, continue.
It's Falsifer is which is spelled in a weird way, as I'm sure you can see right there, because it apparently has some type of Roman tie spelled in a more phonetic way. It's the left-handed reaper, and that's kind of like an anti-cosmic Satanist kind of vibe. I mean, that's really I really don't want to go too deep into it because I'm sure I'm going to fuck it up and not be true anymore. And then I'm going to have to start using my U's as actual U's instead of V's, and I mean, that's just shameful.
Hopefully some people got that reference.
I'm trying to find Falsifer.
Oh yeah,
you know what? Look up what he was describing, which is called the Temple of the Black Light.
Yeah, Temple of the Black Light. I believe it's an offshoot of that.
But if you look into what was
Temple of the Black Light.
Yeah, or if you look up anti-cosmic, it'll bring up both. But
Temple of the Black Light. I've got the Wikipedia loading up here. Continue.
Yeah, so give you a little more information on it. So these are so it was something I'm going to say, and it's not anything to you know, we're not experts on it, and there is some members of the bands who do really know a lot about this. And you know, we were hoping that we could have them on here and kind of explain this aspect of the.
Well, unless we're not a theological thing, we're not trying to push.
We're not trying to push
us
it.
as a band. We're not trying to push an ideology, but we do want to try and artistically capture something that embodies.
Well, yeah, I mean that dude. Look, we had Grant from in the Company of Serpents on here, and he was talking about occultism.
Like teaching a fucking lecture with that. I heard that podcast. I was like, Jesus, dude. He's like, does he have notes?
Yeah, dude, seriously, it was so amazing. But like,
I learned so much about Jewish mysticism.
Seriously,
it was so cool. But have you guys ever read The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell?
Oh yeah, I've looked it up. I have not read it, but there was some.
I haven't read it.
Yeah.
Like he just talks about the monomyth, the idea. I don't think that there is anything wrong with being curious and wanting to tell tales and share stories and borrow from the teachings of different points in human history and different cultures. I think I don't see anything threatening in that at all. I think it's really fucking cool, especially something like especially if it helps to portray the motif that you guys are going for, which, I mean, it really looks like it does. Temple of the Black Light, the misanthropic Luciferian order, is an occult order found in Sweden in 1995 and later renamed to, hold on, I'm trying to get this over here. And later renamed to, where is it?
The misanthropic order was renamed to the Temple of the Black Light.
Temple of the Black Light. The MLO released Liber Azerate, a modern grimoire written by the order's Magister Templi Frater Nymedal.
Yeah, right. Like, good luck pronouncing that fucking vegetable soup of a language that is the Scandinavian tongue.
Yeah. It was released on the internet in Swedish and Norwegian. Azerit is the hidden name of the 11 anti-cosmic gods described in the book. A related musical work is the 2006 Dissection album.
Rain Chaos.
Yeah,
Rain Chaos.
Big fans of that band.
Yeah, like Dissection is dope.
Yeah.
The lyrics of which were co-written by Frater Namidal, and which album John Newvite explained was based on the book Liber Azerate and the Teachings of MLO, Chaos, Gnostic, Satanism, or Current 218. Fucking cool.
So we can get way into that. I'm decently read, but I'm not someone.
Yeah, Clay's really deep into that.
Clay would be the best person to ask, but if any listeners are interested, go check it out. We are not necessarily so. And here's a big thing I want to stress: none of us are super this is our religion or anything, but it's very interesting and it's a great artistic template.
Well, and it's fun to play dress up.
And our wrath.
Yeah, I would actually say that Clay is, though. I think he's one of the most sincere with it.
Oh, he's for real? For real?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't speak for Clay's belief.
Yeah,
and
I can't.
Personally, I'm a Discordian. Robert Anton Wilson is where I personally get my theology from. And I use that ironically for anyone who's familiar with Robert Anton Wilson or the Discordian belief system.
Yeah, we talked about Robert Anton Wilson on Grant's episode of the podcast.
Yeah, big fan. That's kind of my school thought on stuff.
What is it called? Psycho-Cybernetics? Is that what? Or no, Prometheus Rising was Robert Anton Wilson.
Love that book. It's on my bookshelf. Read it multiple times. The Illuminatus trilogy, so fitting in this day and age. Absolutely love it.
I gotta actually add that to my books want list real quick.
Oh man, I highly recommend it. It's a blast. It's great to go through. But so from my 2 cents, and it's a lot of us come from a lot of theological, philosophical backgrounds and beliefs, but the anti-cosmic thing is such a cathartic beautiful release of something that I think that we all as humans, not just us as a band, but we all as humans kind of share this feeling of existential, like, imprisonment. Like, it goes beyond like something you'd read in Kamas or Sartre. Like, and I mean, there's some unfavorable things in the acausal theology that I'm sure people who go and look out and read like any of the Libres or like Liber Falsifer or Liber Azerade, or like they've got a lot of books that if you can get your hands on, there's definitely some flavors and themes that are not suitable that we don't condone.
Right.
Kind of some like hard right themes that's
right, which is something that I kind of and since you brought it up, it's something that maybe bears covering a little bit, is because we have in recent years seen I mean, we've seen you're not even supposed to admit that cancel culture is a thing that exists, but clearly it does if you're afraid of getting canceled by mentioning it, you know.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like, dude, have you guys seen the letter that came out that a bunch of people from the world of literature and academia and entertainment all signed on, that was basically was an open letter talking about the need to eliminate that that aspect of our culture because it gets rid of it annihilates free speech, and the backlash from it only validated its original thesis, you know, which was a bunch of people came and a bunch of people got attacked, and one person who signed the letter recanted. It was like some journalist from Vox or something like that recanted, and it became this big old thing. And it was so anyway. We've seen among the demonstrations of this sort of outrage and cancellation activism, we've seen a lot of black metal bands get shut down. And I want to know what your opinions are on where the lines are drawn, and can a distinction be made between bands that celebrate the style of music and bands that additionally embrace the ideology in earnest? What are your thoughts on that?
So, personally, and I'll let Gianni speak on his personal opinion, because we don't have the other four members.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to speak on that.
Yeah, so we can't speak as a full band.
Right, of course, you guys personally.
Yeah. Personally, I feel that it's a little tricky. Obviously, bands like Passy Noir are a fucking problem, and they're fucking gross, and I don't condone NSBM. But
explain that, because I don't think a lot of people know that band. I don't even know they are.
So, like, Passy Noir is a French National Socialist band. They're a Nazi band. They're gross as shit. Like, feel free to look them up.
And NSBM is National Socialist Black Metal, right?
Or Nazi black metal.
Which is like could not be further from anyone in the band's interest.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's not what we're about, but it is a big thing. And when you talk about Abrahamic religion, that also lumps in Islamic and Judaism.
Right.
And so there's a kind of a fine line. And personally, how I feel about it is there are radicals in everything, which are gross. Radical Islam's gross. Radical Christianity's gross.
Well, extremism in general is kind of gross. And
yeah, I agree 100%. But I'm not attacking the average person of faith. And that's not what I want to go for, because I believe you can believe what you want. And I'm not going to bother you for it. And what gets tricky with Judaism is, as a religion as a whole, for the most part, I am not a theologist. Don't fucking take it all. But my understanding is Judaism as a whole doesn't really fucking bother other people or force conversion on them or stuff. So I don't really have that much of a problem. And I think that a lot of people also feel that way. So to attack Judaism seems or I don't know, but it's definitely understandable to look at it as anti-Semitism.
Right. Well, I mean, in many cases, it is in an overt fashion, but there's an aspect of it if I didn't understand correctly, in the earliest days of the genre, it was more about adopting the most shocking and horrific and brutal imagery that you possibly could, whether you agreed with it in earnest or not. And some people have taken it seriously, you know, just as there were people who, you know, took G.G. Allen as a prophet of some sort, or took him seriously in any way, or people who take Guar seriously, you know, they are out there.
I would say it's a little bit different because if we're talking about originally, and we're not talking about the first wave of black metal, we're talking about the second wave of black metal, which is the Norwegian wave of black metal, which is what most people associate. Like, we're not talking about Venom, we're not talking about Sodom, we're not talking about those guys. We're talking about Burzum, we're talking about Mayhem, Satyricon, Immortal, and I think a big part of that comes from a rejection of Christian oppression of pagan beliefs, and that kind of
they viewed it more as they viewed the Abrahamic religions as colonists.
And
you know, they felt because like they were of Celtic origin or Scandinavian origin, that they were colonized by clerics of different Abrahamic religions, correct?
Yeah, that's I'm not a historian, nor am I an ethnomusician. But
nor am I an ethnomusician. Me neither. Hey, we're just a bunch of guys having a conversation. It's okay.
But yeah, I would agree with that 100%. It was a rebellion of specifically Christian oppression. I mean, like, and you can even like, and it's so interesting seeing like our drummer actually. I wish he was here so he could give this argument, but no one, which is what he's going by for this project.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, right. It's
who's your drummer? No one.
He's shrouded in mystery.
But he actually pitched a really interesting idea to me of reggae and black metal being two sides of the same coin, based on Puritan oppression of their cultures, and the fact that it's purist genres. But one focuses so much on negativity and like kind of expelling that venom, while the other focuses on embracing a lighter side of things. And that's stuck with me a lot. And I think that's kind of an interesting way to look at it. And it's kind of tricky because like Islam, Judaism, they're all Abrahamic, but you know, like, I'm not a historian or a theologist again, but I can't think of a single country that was conquered in the name of Judaism that didn't have American influence on it. Because we can talk about the Islam-Palestine thing, but that's mostly Western. That's mostly Americans and Europeans, in my belief. But
fair point.
I'm not trying to get into all that.
Right. No, and obviously, no. We're talking about metal music. And okay, so from what I understand, a lot of the bands that have had shows protested and have had their shows shut down as a result of those protests were displaying completely overt and earnest anti-Semitic and Nazi imagery. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that was the band. You're talking about a band that was banned from playing at the High Dive, and I can't remember who they are. But
well, there was another one too. There was the one that was shut down at the. Say it again.
Talk, or TAKE. I know they were recently coming through Denver, and like they got shut fucking down.
Yeah, that got shut down, and then there was another group that was shut down at the old X. They cut like Antero Hall or whatever it was. There was a big article in it was I think the bigger of the two events was the Antero Hall the Antero Hall thing. But then there's also this part of it which is I immediately questioned, you know, are these in fact bands that embrace this ideology, or is this part of the style of music which is necessarily designed to come out and be provocative and be as sonically and aesthetically menacing as possible? Do you think that there is a line between the two, or that, you know, if you have any part of any of that imagery or even hint at portraying that ideology, whether you believe in it in earnest or not, do you think that that has a place in the genre?
I mean, I think that, you know, that's one of those things for me where that's even before I was born or even into the music. You know what I mean? A lot
Right.
of, you know, I'm not going to deny that there's like current bands that are socialist.
I'm in my 20s, man.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not denying that there's not like current socialist bands and those things that are around there. But those things may have been invoking those things, just like kind of early, like, you know, Nazi punk bands were invoking things.
I mean, even in France, like in like the 70s, there was like that weird like punk movement where like people were wearing Nazi shit just to shock.
Right. Like Sid Vicious wearing a swastika T-shirt. That would never fly today.
Never.
Or like Lemmy wearing, you know, World War II memorabilia.
Yeah, totally. And so I think that there was a lot of that going on to influence maybe the people that influenced us, that were maybe not privy to like really what that meant at the time. They turned a blind eye onto it. But I will tell you that almost everyone in the band, and you know, I can't speak for everyone, but for myself, those aren't the things that actually attracted me to the genre. Those weren't the things that actually got me interested in the genre, was any kind of that kind of, you know, like looking at the master race kind of shit. You know, what I loved was the imagery of misanthropy or misanthropic kind of look at like that, you know, all humans are like, you know, like non-worthy, and that like humankind is evil, and that there is actually dark, evil things lurking in the forest.
Misanthropic is a great word. I'm glad that was in the very beginning of the
things that are interesting to me is that the fact that there is no such thing as pure light and pure happiness and pure you know, those pure love emotions. There's actually a lot of the opposite, and our day-to-day life is actually dealing with a lot of those really dark things to hopefully invoke and get to the love and get to those places where it's comfortable. And there's a lot of things that we have to do to go through, and we have to serve through, and we have to deal with to actually feel the emotions of love. And that, you know, I felt like in my life growing up, it was just like everything's good and everything's happy and God's here, and, you know, like just pray to God that this doesn't happen and be happy and be so grateful for all the things that you want. But I knew that there was things that were dark, and there was really crazy shitty stuff that you would see on TV and the news, and you would hear about things about family members, you would hear about murders, you'd hear about all these things that are really fucking brutal that exist out there. So it's not this thing where like I'm chasing that, like I want to be a murderer, I want to be like psychotic in those ways, but it exists. And with that existence, there's a way to tell stories, and there's a way to like take your energy and put it into that. And actually, I think a lot of what I stand behind with this, with like being in these kind of dark genre, dark, like, you know, black metal, all these different things, is that I can display those tendencies and that evilness and put all of that energy that is considered dark energy or malice into the music, which is a safe place to expel it onto people that can also hopefully use our music or our performance to let out their anger and their evilness and their malice and their hatred for mankind in a constructive way where we're all doing it together and not hurting a soul.
Well, with awareness and in sort of a way of
worshiping it.
Sort of integrating the shadow. Yeah. You know, like Kali, or what this goddess that is on your album art here. You know, when I saw this, I immediately thought of like Kali.
Yeah, which is a huge part of what that's based off of. So I'm glad that it was portrayed, and it just shouts out so much to the artist. It's again we'll put her like Instagram in it, but she captured it fucking dead on.
No, it's very cool, and I think it definitely captures what you guys have been talking about, and I'm excited to hear some music.
Can't wait to show it to you, man.
I'm really excited to see a show. And guys, we're at 6:00, man. Like there's so much more we could do. We could talk so much more. I would love to have both of you back on. I'd love to have the other guys from the band on. When we can have people in a room after the album comes out, you know, Gianni, you can attest that it's a lot more fun when you're in the room.
Nation.
Real time.
Say it
Real
one more
time.
time. Say it one more time, Gianni. I was cutting you off.
Talking over. No, I was talking over you. I apologize. No, I was telling these guys, I was like, dude, Nug Nation is gonna make you like go to. It made me like, I walked in and I was like, oh shit, this is like actually gonna, like, I'm really excited about this now. After you get to see the behind the scenes of what these guys do in the studio, and to be, you know, in the studio, and you guys' production is really, I mean, this is great, you know, but in the studio is really wonderful. I mean, I really think that you guys
It's
are
different when you're
on.
breathing the same air too.
Yeah, it's top notch when you're in there, when you're in there doing it.
Like
Just
right now, we're just acting like a bunch of goddamn Twitch streamers, but we're old as fuck. So like, we're gonna like, we're definitely gonna stand out in people's feed of like hot anime character looking girls playing video games all
Yourself,
day
man.
and making
I'm
hundreds.
a young Twitcher.
Yeah.
I'm a young
Yeah.
Twitcher, man.
What are these
Well, I mean,
guys
I'm
doing?
literally the anime futurani, if I'm using those terms.
Dude, these kids are making so much goddamn money like, you
Right?
should see it, man. Like I got when I open it because oh, by the way, welcome to our first ever Twitch stream. This is the first time we've ever streamed on Twitch, and I got on and I was just going through the feed and I'm like,
Cool.
oh, we're gonna stick out like a sore thumb, man. People don't want to watch us. They
We're
wanna-
like doing Twitches, and I'm all, what's a Twitch?
So
Like-
before we exit that, I do have a 2 cents just because you asked about where the line is. And this will be really quick.
Oh
I
yeah,
think the-
definitely. Go ahead and finish your point.
Focus on more worldly things as opposed to, like, I don't know, fourth dimensional, theological, philosophical things. When you focus on specific demographics of people, that's where a line is crossed. As opposed to, I think there's a huge difference between I hate everyone and I hate this one specific demographic of people because of nonsense.
Well, and also I think that that manner of ideology, that manner of modern political structure, I don't think that is at the same logical level as misanthropic naturalist mysticism. You know what I mean? Like
No.
you guys are talking about more. You guys are talking about.
Well, that's exactly what I'm trying to express is we're not on a earthly level. We're on a beyond that level.
Right. You guys are touching on things that are more from the unknown and less
Yeah.
from the political and systematic and structural. It's more about the ether. It's that higher level of abstraction.
Yeah.
So I mean I would never place that on you, but it's just something that I've been thinking about because when it first started going down, my feeling initially was, people should be able to do whatever they want. People should be able to do and say whatever they want. And at the same time, a venue is an independent business and has the right to shut people down and ask them not to play.
And of course,
people
have the right
do
to have repercussions against them.
right. Exactly. You have no you have freedom of speech, but you don't have freedom from response.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, I don't believe in like that people, they should be run out of society. I think they should be integrated into society and forced to come to the logical conclusion and see the fallacy of their ideology. Like I think that they should be forced to integrate in society. We should try and bring them in and show them the error of their ways. I'm big on teaching people who have gone astray or found something that is not serving mankind. I'm a big fan of that. At the same time, you're going to face criticism if you say things. You have to be prepared to be criticized and attacked. And if a independent business thinks that they don't want to get splattered with the shit that comes from that attack, that is their prerogative. And you run that risk if you decide to affix ideology to your art.
Well, and even like as an independent, because it works like the opposite. Like like a Karen on a bus, like spouting, "Go back to your country." That's gonna bite her in the ass. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like it's we have to be open to criticism, but we also have to call bullshit and evil out when we see it.
Right.
But we also have to accept that we have bullshit and evil in our hearts. And my God, that doesn't sound great.
Well,
But,
and nobody in humanity is separate from it.
No, exactly.
We all have that ugliness in us by a matter of degree and a matter of amplification.
Yeah. And I think like stuff like that is what makes the subject so difficult, because it's because I mean you can apply that same type of logic to people like Messy Noir, who are insanely gross and awful. They got some sick guitar riffs, but my God, they're the worst people ever.
Well, Ted Nugent's got some sick guitar riffs too, but he's a fucking total butthole. You know what I mean?
He's the worst.
a hard one. I get conflicted with him. I'm like, he's so good at guitar, but I'm like, I fucking hate that.
Oh,
dude,
I love Ted Nugent's music. And here's the fucked up thing: is I've even seen interviews with him, and have heard third-party stories about him, where people like Anthony Bourdain went to his ranch, and on that episode of No Reservations. Now this is before Ted Nugent really said some shit in the press, but
Bourdain, the patron saint of heroin addicted cooks.
oh, dude, but Anthony Bourdain had Ted Nugent on his show, and he would write basically the narration for the whole episode, and in his narration for the episode, he was like, Ted's one of those guys that is just so nice and so welcoming and so friendly and amiable that you can't help but find yourself politely nodding along with him while he talks sometimes. Like it's one of those things that's like, yeah, he's totally gross, but he's an amazing guitar player, and his grossness isn't the entirety of his personality.
Yeah, totally. And there's definitely like some, I don't agree with him with a lot of things, but there's interviews that I've seen with him and I was like, that's great. But there's other print interviews that I've read with him that I really question what the fuck's going on through that guy's head. With calling, he like literally categorizing different guitar players and then categorizing the black guitar players different, and using like he would call them Negro guitar players as opposed to.
Well, in all fairness, he did come from a different part of the music industry where it was called, like when the Amboy Dukes were going.
Yeah.
That was just after, like when he was going to record stores, there was a section called black music.
And it's crazy to, it's hard. I guess that is a hard thing to kind of
reconcile.
Into.
Yeah,
reconcile, but at the same time, I can't apologize enough for the incidences where I may have fell ill into those areas and maybe made mistakes. But I can only justify mine. I can't justify someone else's, and apologize for my bad character at times,
Well, I think that we need to hold people accountable for the shit that they say and do. And at the same time, I think it would be useful for us to develop in us culturally a process of destigmatizing ignorance and destigmatizing ugliness. And
it's okay because he's from X, Y, and Z, or it's okay because it came from this time. It's hard to
right. And it isn't a justification, but it is a window into the
acceptance.
Well, into the massively like we're trying to box in human behavior, and we can't even fully understand the human genome yet. We've kind of mapped it out, and we have this idea of it, but we don't, like, there's a tendency in our culture, and Malcolm Gladwell talked about this, there's a tendency in our culture to make fundamental attribution errors about people and say that because, like, if someone is rude to someone, we say that person is rude. If someone is generous in a handful of specific, if they display generous behavior, we say that person is generous. Right. And that becomes the attribution of them, but it doesn't take into account that you can be mean, kind, rude, generous, annoying, opinionated, pushy, sweet, lovable. Like, you can be all these different things at the same time and at different points and different, from moment to moment throughout your day. And I don't, and I mean, we kind of went off on a tangent here, but like one of the things that
that's a good view on that, though. I've never thought of it that way. Yeah,
it is. And going off tangents is a great thing, it just means that we're delving into, I mean, like some of the questions that are asked were, I mean, complex. I mean, they seem to have simple answers, but they also have complex answers as well, and it's worth kind of delving into who we are as people. And I think that's why a lot of people drift to extreme music and things that can't be answered so easily, is because they want to delve into, like, who are we, like
mystery, existentialism.
Like, how do we as society interact with things, like the good, the bad, the ugly?
Well, none of us want to be destroyed, but yet many of us are obsessed with the apocalypse. I mean, we're writing a goddamn comic book about the apocalypse, and I'm sorry for predicting it. We didn't mean to, but because I don't want to be wiped out. I don't want to live in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. I wouldn't want that to happen. I don't want billions of people to lose their lives. But I am very curious as to why those images exist in my brain. And it's because it's part of who we are. Like the good and the bad, the light and the dark, man. And I think what you guys are doing is really cool. I think the themes you're exploring are really cool. I think it's truly admirable that you guys are focusing in and drilling down into such a very specific human experience. And it'll be interesting to see how much it spreads out, like how much you dive into it and it gets deeper and broadens, and you're able to like really unpack such a universal human experience like grief, like mourning.
Yeah,
I think it's very cool.
Yeah.
So tell people where they can find you, where they can get your shit, what they can look forward to. Do the plug, man.
Social media guy.
Yeah, so we will try to. Oh,
there goes my phone.
So break your phone. So we have everything is just going to be our name, because it is unique enough that we don't have to really do any other added things to it. So it'll be Necrosophik Abyss. You'll be able to look it up on Facebook. If you have the spelling off this podcast, and we have a Instagram as well. We will eventually, when we do get some tangible music to put out, we'll probably get a Bandcamp together and give our music out that way, or we'll share it in all the common ways of streaming, and actually probably eventually making past a digital platform. We'll get into some type of true print of the album. Maybe I would imagine that we would. If I could dream it up, it would be that we would do digital, and then we'd also do like maybe a small EP, like a 45 or something, that if it fits on there. We're doing 4 songs. I think it's 18 minutes. I don't know how many minutes it has to be on a small little guy. But
can I just say that
tape cassette maybe?
Can I just say that I just can't think of anything more abysmal than having nothing.
Yeah, we have nothing to
Where
share.
can you find us? Nowhere. What do you guys have out right now? Nothing.
Yeah, we really did want to. So the
We
goal.
got you the most brutal, nihilistic gift of all. Nothing.
we definitely wanted to, because we're all older and we've all been in bands, and we didn't want to it's
Bro,
a terrible
28.
terrible. I know, yeah. He's the baby. He's the youngest one in the band. I'm the second
Don't let the
youngest
beard
at
fool
35. So, we've all been in bands where we put stuff out too early, and we're like, we're not going to do that. There's no reason to do that. People don't care, until we put it out. So, we've been waiting to put something out that's actually going to be something that people will hopefully, if they do get their hands on it, will like it, because it's good quality. So we've had a few different times where we were going to put
like it.
we were going to put some stuff out that we were like, we're not going to share stuff that's like our demos, and it's just.
You guys should put out the sheet music first.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then maybe like have some bands like try and do it, and then you'd be like, oh, and then you could just critique it and be like,
like that.
oh, that's a failure right there. And then when you drop your album, it'll be like, holy fuck.
Right.
free at last. Like they put out all the thing and just like, hey, cover the song that you've never heard before, and they made a compilation for the music video, and then the music video was a lesson of them teaching you how to play the actual song that they intended it to go.
Well, and then the night you guys are supposed to premiere the music as it was written, as it was intended to be played, Josh, you just have to murder Gianni.
Oh yeah.
One murder to keep the band.
Dude, did you hear the singer murdered one of the guitar players right before their first show?
The rest of our albums, I'll be in like a really classy prison. Just like it's gonna be like all done through Patreon. Everyone's gonna give me like a fleshed out nice prison cell, nice little like SMB 57. You know, we're gonna soundproof. It's gonna be dope.
And on that note, be sure to get onto Patreon and support any artist that you're really into. Necrosophik Abyss post-murder prison album will be on there at some point. Thanks so much to our patrons who make the podcast possible. You guys make the goddamn world go round. If you guys are interested in helping us make cool shit, the podcast, albums, everything else that is made possible by our patrons, you can become a patron today at patreon.com/mfruckus. Thanks to Evergroove Studio. Oh, man, they're the coolest. Speaking of some of the recording stuff we were talking about earlier in the show, like we're able to record at home, send AIFF files up to Evergroove Studio and piece it all together for our new album that we're working on. Like, Brad is really doing everything that he can to help musicians out. It's truly amazing. Check out Evergroove Studio. RocketSpace Rehearsal Studios. Me and Ty are actually getting together to go have a little jam out at RocketSpace coming up here soon. I'm super excited about that, man. Burn TV Studios, home of the Nug Nation, the motherfucking podcast, and a bunch of other great content. Stay tuned for what Burn TV's got coming up, man. Really, really, really cool shit. I got to see some of the dailies for the new thing we've been doing with Hempire, the Hemp and History series that we've been building for them. And it's the greatest thing that the Nug Nation has ever done. It's really, really incredible. So stay tuned for that. Flipside Music on South Tacoma Street here in Denver. Life is short. Make some noise. I'm going to be going down there to take a look at some guitar pedals and stuff for when we really get going. And I'm sure maybe a guitar or two will catch my eye. Really excited about that. Let's see. Oh, Matula Plumbing. Matula! Shit rolls downhill. Don't be at the bottom. Your number 2 is our number 1 priority. Your shit is our bread and butter. Angie's List Service, Secret Service, Super Server Award winner. Back in 2011, won one's the only one that matters. After that, it got all fucking bullshitty. If you need your shits piped out, call the master of poopers himself. He'll wear the booties for you, Jerry Matula. And last and certainly not least, Mutiny Information Cafe, the motherfucking podcast, and a bunch of other great content are part of Mutiny Transmissions, which is a media service division of Mutiny Information Cafe. Mutiny is everything. To call them a coffee shop would not do them justice. To call them a record store would not do them justice. To call them a live music venue would not do them justice. They are fucking everything. Books, comics, records, music, live music, podcasts.
Tarani syrups.
No one has a larger selection of Tarani syrups. No one.
No one.
Not one person. You know what else they got? They got my vending machine down there now.
What's your vending machine?
Oh, yeah, dude.
I got a Castle vending machine at Mutiny now.
You have a vending machine at Mutiny?
Yep.
What are you vending? Oh, your earplugs.
No,
and
candy.
business cards.
Candy.
Candy?
Yeah.
I'll
send you a picture of it.
What kind of candy?
Like good candy, like Airheads and like
Kind of
Mike and Ike's. There's toys in there.
Tight.
I'm gonna send you.
I saw the pictures on Instagram. It looks real super legit.
That is bitchin'.
I put out a filler for it, and Jim was the first person to respond to me, and I was like, "That's actually where I wanted it to be." I was like, "This would be perfect, at a place like Mutiny."
Dude, he's into that shit.
And he responds like 2 seconds. He's like, "That will look cool at Mutiny." And I'm like, "Done deal, dude. That's exactly where it should be." So I'll send you a picture.
Jim and I, back in the Rockaway days, wanted to turn a cigarette machine into an automat and start making little, like having local artists and musicians make little cigarette pack packages. But do you know how hard it is to get a cigarette machine repaired?
I can only imagine, dude. Those were only around for so long, and then they were. I mean,
there's like one guy in Denver that does them, and he's a total nut job.
Yeah,
like we couldn't pin him down. It's kind of like having that like one guy in town who works on amps that's also a total kook.
There's a few of those actually, and let's shout them out because there are some good ones.
Oh yeah,
City is one of my favorites. If you guys are looking for a good one, Gordo, Electric City. And then there's, of course,
Robot's Place is Electric City Robot's Place.
He did a really good job. Actually, he's got a tech out there, but he did a really good job in like my amp that I have now. And I haven't had to have the tubes replaced, and it was biased so well. It's lasted longer than anyone have had service it. So I would definitely, like, if you want to shout out homies, I'm going to shout out Electric City because they are really good at doing amp repairs.
Shout out to Electric City. And, hey, shout out to Necrosophik Abyss and their forthcoming album. What's the album called, guys?
False Fur.
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah. Apocalypse pending. Well, shit.
Yeah.
Guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me and Gordo. Gordo, I am just so happy to see your face. I'm always so happy to see your face, man.
Likewise.
Yeah, I look forward to it every week.
All your faces.
Hey, when you feel comfortable jamming, maybe we should jam.
Get a jam on.
I would love to get a jam on. Gianni, I would love to get a jam on if you're into jamming.
You want to work on some Dio stuff? Because I know you can handle that.
Yeah, I'll do some. You might have to transpose it, but I'm into doing some Dio stuff.
Yeah, any of that kind of classic rock and metal stuff. If you ever need someone to play guitar, don't threaten me with a good time because I will.
Oh, dude, I'm into it. I'm just down to, dude. I've been jamming with my 70-year-old fucking hippie neighbor, man. Like he's been playing cajon and I've been playing acoustic guitar for all the kids.
That's perfect.
Yeah, I'm gonna stream some tomorrow. I've been kind of silent on social media, but I'm gonna stream some of it tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that.
I will tell you, I was a fan of seeing those videos and those darkened beginnings of the Pestilence, dude. I was like, these are beautiful. I mean, they were really great arrangements, and you did a really good job, and they were sincere. And
I had to stop. And I've mentioned this before on the show. I just had to stop because I can't do social media, man, right now.
Yeah.
I can't put pretty songs and pictures of my kid in between videos of cops assaulting people and people assaulting cops and cops yelling shit and people yelling shit about cops and people yelling at each other about and people doxing each other and videos of people saying racist shit and then people getting beat up and then Donald Trump says something stupid and then just the comments of people frothing in the at the mouth and just it's like I don't know which is worse honestly at this point, and I just can't do it, man, and I find it to be deranged and deranging. And on that note, thanks to all of you who have been watching this on Facebook and Twitch and YouTube and
you guys.
Fuck social media.
I mean, I'm not stupid. I'm not going to get out of it entirely, but I'm not looking at a feed and and then not only that, once I stopped doing it, and I've told this to Gordo, once I stopped doing it, I started focusing on practicing the instrument more and lost a lot less time to set up and started putting that setup time into scales and learning theory and
it's like you said, dude, it's like a little hit of dopamine and they keep giving you smaller and smaller and smaller little pieces of dopamine.
I mean, really, they do,
really,
you know.
You get less and less.
It's like I started finding myself, and I've had it happen on the podcast before too, where I can observe myself either censoring myself or at worst speaking untruths. No, I mean, not like outright lies or anything like that, but oversimplifying very complicated ideas, you know, just to try and profess my alignment with the right group.
Yep.
You know, and I think we all do it, and I want to see the big problems in the world. I want to see the needle moved, and I don't think I'm helping to move the needle by being a part of that machine in its current iteration. I'm not going to go off social media for life. I'm sure something else will emerge and be somewhat less of a nightmare, but I just can't do it for now.
Okay.
Just for now. But I had a lot of fun making those videos, man. And
really did like a lot of those. Really good.
I'm going to do some more stuff and figure out a way to do it. Maybe I'll do some streams or something like that. And, I mean, I am still playing, for anyone who's been wondering. I am still playing every single day. I just had to scale down on producing content because I'm feeling ethically conflicted.
Well, it's how I am. I put those similar type of guitar videos. I don't sing though, but I put the guitar videos out where I'm playing guitar. And I agree. You put a lot of effort to it. And, there's going to be a staple of people that see it. But, it's not exactly what it is that I want. It's like, it's not like going and playing a performance. It's like I'm putting it on social media for people to just scroll past it and be like, whatever, or just blindly like it and not even listen to it. So it's a weird thing to do.
Well,
but,
and it's an addiction to praise.
Yeah.
It's an addiction to dopamine and strokes. And it's like, I started thinking about, what do I really want? And what I really want is to make music with my friends and connect with people.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, that's more fun than sitting there checking your phone every 5 seconds and being like, did anyone else like it?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, dude, I'm one by one systematically taking things off my phone, and I'm noticing more time open up in my day, and I'm noticing more connection and more presence open up in my day. And yeah, man, I mean, especially with a little boy at home, I'm concerned about him growing up in a world like I'm concerned about him getting to a certain age and wanting to be in that space and seeing how damaging it can be.
Yeah.
I'm and that's a whole nother can of worms that would be a whole nother podcast. So next time you guys come on,
yeah, we'll come back.
We'll have a nice little bitch fest. It'll be great.
I'm stoked to be back. This has been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure. It's been a real pleasure meeting and getting to know you, Josh. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Guests today, Josh and Gianni from Necrosophik Abyss. Really looking forward to seeing you guys on the other side of the pestilence. And thanks